Hi, I'm Carlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Carolyn Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Well, hey, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the cult. I have redonned my gender-specific ensemble because, of course, it is going to be gender justice today on the cult. And we all need to make sure we are reflecting our very best pronouns. My pronouns, of course, are Unabomber, not in the literal sense because I'm not motivated enough to actually make a bomb, but I'll dress the part for a little while. The Cult is a show that I stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. on this here YouTube channel, on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, and on Rumble, where we talk about the culture war with a heavy emphasis on doing deep dives into the far left ideology that is eliciting a cultural revolution in our country today. What does that mean? We watch a lot of leftist training. We watch a lot of leftist videos. We don't watch clips like you're going to see on Libs of TikTok. No. That is for people who are much less smart than us. And most of that stuff isn't even real. We watch the full form trainings from start to finish so that we can see what's actually going on in the world, what's coming next. And people who tune into my content on a regular basis are years and years ahead of what you're going to see reported in conservative media. They're years ahead of how people understand what the left is doing. We're so far ahead of most people on what the left is doing that it is almost becoming difficult to associate with people who are not quite on our level, isn't it? Isn't it funny? I actually do mean this though. I mean, I like people might say, they say, Carlin, you got such a big head about you. I mean, if you knew that you were years ahead of someone, and you were kind of like watching them flounder about, like say you've been taking swimming classes for 5 or 10 years, right? You're like an expert swimmer. You can basically teach the swimming class at this point. And then you watch all these people coming in and they're in like their first year of classes or their second year of classes, but they think they know everything, don't they? They think they know everything there is to know about swimming. They think that they don't need to do any more. And you're kind of like, I'm years ahead of you, bro, and I know how much you don't know. I know how much you don't know. You don't know how much you don't know because you haven't done the work. But I know how much you don't know. That's what it's like to be in my community. I've had some realizations, well, over the past several months, but they really kind of solidified in the last day of like the people who are in my community, the people who watch my content, the people who deep dive with me every single day. We are like this weird little I really need to redo my office to like get the cheery green off the walls because it doesn't fit the vibe of what I'm going for anymore. It did back in the day when I originally painted it, but someday the walls behind me are going to be a nice crimson red to kind of make it much more moody because like we are at the tip of the spear in terms of what's going on. We do all these crazy deep dives. It's like an underground cult sort of thing. Oh yeah. Yeah, seriously, this shit happens all the time. I just saw a YouTube short that included me and they called me a woke liberal because I was explaining how the ideology in math is racist. Conservatives are dumb AF. Aren't they ever? Aren't they ever? You know, it's okay. Look down upon them like you would look down on a preschooler. So stupid. So naive. But it's not their fault. They don't have the capacity for more. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's where they are. You have to treat adult conservatives like they're in kindergarten. You have to corral them in the same way. You have to speak to them in the same way. Many of them, though not all, are just not capable of going beyond that. But we hold ourselves to a little bit of a higher standard here. So I've got some good news. Yeah, conservatives are DEI woke. Yep. Oh, I missed a super chat. I apologize. I find it interesting how many people who claim to be socialists on social media really have no idea what social media or what socialism is. Yeah, I mean, that's very true. And we don't watch those people. Like, it's very easy for us to tell the difference between like an actual socialist and a social media socialist. Like, Vosh is not a socialist. Like, Hassan Piker is not a socialist. These people are not socialists. And they might play one on the internet, but this is why we don't watch like popular YouTubers on this channel. This is why we focus on the real activists, because for exactly this reason, it's like all these people claim to be socialists, but they really have no effing idea. So I have some good news, and actually maybe I have more good news. Brent, did Ben Shapiro shout me out today? Did that actually happen, or are you just being a smartass? I'm being serious. If you're being a smartass and I look into this and I find out later that you're being a smartass, I'm going to be pissed off. Like, did this actually happen? Is this real? Because I don't watch Ben Shapiro. So let me know if that actually happened. But the reason I think it might have happened is because... Yeah, so you're being a smartass because that intro was from 4 years ago. Thank you, Brent. I appreciate... Yeah. Okay. Not what we're talking about today, bro. Thank you, though. All right. The reason I thought that might have actually happened is because I have some good news. The Daily Wire, in their reporting on the Montana story, did actually include my tweet, which was pretty shocking to me when I heard about it because I was like, really? This reporter at the Daily Wire must not have gotten the memo yet about me because the Daily Wire don't like me at all. But that's fine. That's pretty cool. The Daily Wire actually included my tweet at the top of their story about the Montana case. By the way, the governor saying that nothing happened, that like nothing happened wrong in this case. Basically what happened is they only talked to Child Protective Services. Here's what actually happened with this. And there's still like this is not fucking over yet. The governor has not heard the last of this. Because was I in Not the Bee too? Seriously? That's kind of cool. So what happened with this is the governor sent his lieutenant governor to go talk to Child Protective Services, and Child Protective Services was like, we promise we did everything right. And then the lieutenant governor was like, okay, I trust you. And then went back to the governor and was like, don't worry, nothing bad happened. But when the state did their investigation about this, they didn't actually talk to the family. They didn't talk to the family. They didn't look at the family's records. They basically went to Child Protective Services, and Child Protective Services said, pinky swear, trust me, bro. And the lieutenant governor was like, okay, I'm sure you guys would never lie. And that is what the governor is responding to. So F the governor. Like, this is why we don't trust Republicans. This is why you never trust Republicans. Because they lie just as much as Democrats. Just as much as Democrats. They had my tweet in the article too. That's cool. That's cool. Thank you, Not the Bee, for having my tweet in your article. I appreciate it. This isn't the only place that had the tweet in my article, though. Crowder. Louder with Crowder also had my tweet in their article. Ha ha, go fillet a cactus, Redux Magazine. It was also in the Gateway Pundit. That's cool. Thank you, Gateway Pundit. Thank you, all of the conservative outlets who are telling the truth about where this story came from. I appreciate it, because the feminists at Redux Magazine certainly put up a fight yesterday. I kind of told you guys about this on Twitter, but this continued all effing day. So by the time it hit, like, I don't know, 10 o'clock last night, and I had been hearing from these goddamn feminists in my Twitter all fucking day complaining about the fact that we have an exclusive even though we published the story 4 days after you did. It did get exhausting. It was exhausting. These feminists are insufferable. F these bitches. So, and like I said, like, I wouldn't have even minded had they just updated their article to remove exclusive. And by the way, they're not the only media outlet saying they had an exclusive on this story. That someone sent me a story today on the Daily Mail in the UK, and they say they have an exclusive on the story. I was like, how the fuck did the Daily Mail in the UK claim to have an exclusive on this story that I reported before anyone, and that they also, the fucking feminists, actually reported before the Daily Mail? It's just like, everyone has an exclusive. I have an exclusive. They have an exclusive. I published the story first. That doesn't seem to matter. So last night, I took out my aggression on the feminist bitches, and I wrote up this story if people would like to see just a peek into the nonsense that was in my Twitter feed yesterday from these women. Because what they did was, the pro-women feminists at Redux Magazine literally tried to gaslight me into believing that January 29th is before January 25th, and that the fact that they had a DM conversation 1 day before I released the story, which was 4 days before they released the story, that was all that mattered, was they had a DM conversation with someone, and that meant they have an exclusive, even though I released the story 4 days before they did. And this bitch was in my feed all day. Her friends were in my feed all day. So I wrote a story this morning on my Substack, the title of which is Feminist Whack Job Anna Slats at Redux Magazine claims credit for my reporting and throws a massive temper tantrum when told no. And the image says, feminist takes 5 days to report a story that took me 2 hours, blames me for her failure. I'm sorry, feminists. You can cry all the tears that you want. I am sure when you are dealing with the soy boy men that you deal with on a regular basis when you're drinking fucking lattes and eating vegan food or whatever the fuck it is you guys do, that you can cry, and that the soy boy men in your life will immediately bend the knee to whatever it is you want. But the fact of the matter is, Anna, if you had a real man in your life, that man would have taught you the word no, and maybe temper tantrum meltdowns like what happened on the internet yesterday because you can't read a fucking calendar wouldn't have happened in the first place. Next time, work with more efficiency, Anna. It took me 2 hours to report a story that it took you 5 days to report. And if you want to be a slowpoke about things, then don't complain when someone works more efficiently than you do, gets the story out with over 100,000 views on it before you get around to it. Don't complain. Don't complain. I didn't take 5 days to take my sweet ass time. I wiped everything off of my plate, canceled a stream I was going to do, and got the goddamn story out to the public and then explained what it all meant. And nothing in the world, bitch, nothing in the world is ever going to change that January 25th comes before January 29th. And now over 400,000 people on Twitter know that I got the story out 4 days before you. Thank you, Harmeet Dillon, for sending the tweet in support saying, thank you, Carlin, for breaking the story, because I think that actually did help quite a bit. It's just ridiculous. I have no issue if more people cover this story. I want more people to cover this story. But the fact that I had to spend all day yesterday arguing with feminist bitches who can't read a calendar over something that actually should have been about the fucking story, when all they could have done is exercise a little bit of goddamn intellectual integrity to say, yeah, Carlin, you got it out first. But I did more reporting, because she did do more reporting. She absolutely did. And if she had done that and said, you know what, non-exclusive, my bad, take the fucking exclusive label off the article, I would have said, you know what, great job on your extra reporting. Thank you for doing that. That's how this should work. That's how this should work. Anytime I put a story out, it is my hope that someone is going to follow up on that story and do more reporting, because I don't view it as my job to keep going in depth on stories over and over and over and over and over again. I have too much to cover. Once I put one story out there, I'm already on to the next one. I had already moved on from this story by the time Anna got around to publishing it. So I have no problem with people following up on what I'm doing. That's what Christopher Rufo did. That's what launched him into this space in the first place. But there is no reason why I should have had to deal with being smeared by this stupid fucking feminist bitch in my Twitter yesterday, because she's having a temper tantrum meltdown over the fact that I got there first. And if you want to know what she did, when she couldn't get me to bend the knee to her fucking whim, she started spreading the same smear campaign that's been spread about me every single time I do something that these bitches don't like. This is a 2-year-old smear campaign that I will never bend the knee on, because I was there and I know what happened, bitches. And I know my friend went to jail for a long ass time for a crime he didn't commit. And you can complain all you want about that. But most people understand that people plead guilty to crimes they didn't commit all the time. It happened over and over and over and over and over again in the January 6 cases. The government railroads people all the fucking time. Sadly, someone that I love wound up in a situation like that. I stood by him. I was loyal to him. He has never done anything to kids. He didn't even like kids at the time. So no, Anna, no, intrepid journalist, because you whined and cried and then didn't get your fucking way. You decided to start defaming me on the internet because she's such a good journalist that she took no time to do journalism to discover that I already debunked this entire thing years ago, multiple times over. But the good part for me is so many people have seen this that it doesn't even matter anymore. Because every time these bitches try to use this smear campaign against me, most people already know about it. I'm not ashamed of being loyal to a friend, Anna. The very best you have is that I was fucking loyal. I'll take that fucking badge. I'll take that badge any day, bitch. Any day. And this, sadly for Anna and the bitches of Redux, has lost its effectiveness. Everyone knows about it. No one fucking cares. The people who are dumb enough to buy into this bullshit are some of the stupidest people on the internet. So maybe that's who Anna's really pandering to. IQ just not high enough to do different. Maybe she's just like, I mean, she's not a conservative. She's a rabid man-hating feminist. But maybe we can forgive her for just not being smart enough to do a basic Google search. It must be so hard in between her sipping her lattes and eating her vegan food. Yep. Just a little slow. Late on everything, even late on the smear campaign, Anna. Even late on the smear campaign, weren't you? Too bad, so sad, bitch. Too bad, so sad. But the good news is that a lot of people did acknowledge that I broke the story, which is cool. And I appreciate it. And we know never to trust the bitches of Redux ever again. They're not worth our time or our energy. And now, guys, guess what? We're moving on. We're moving on to the next thing. The story is out there. There are people with the family. There are people working with the governor's office and keeping an eye on that. I don't need to follow this anymore because now we have to go find the next story that conservative influencers are going to pretend they found days after I report it, or weeks after I report it, or months after I report it, even maybe a year after I report it. That's what we're doing today, guys. And we're going to be watching a presentation from a couple weeks ago. And this is actually funny how I found this. This is a presentation for the American Association of University Women in Oregon. Now, I think we can make the assumption that everyone who watched this presentation or participated in this presentation works at a university. So this allows us to kind of see what's going on inside the professional development at universities. And the course is called Gender Justice, The Basics. And I got to say, they gave us a lot of material in this description. In this sentence, or excuse me, in this session, we will learn about the basic definitions of gender, myths, allyship possibilities in helping make the world more equitable for all. Pop quiz for the chat. What does equity mean? How are we defining equity today? If we had to put a definition on the term equity, how would we define it? Let me know what you think in the chat. Hi, Big Z Video Games over on Rumble. Appreciate you. Equity means equal outcomes. It does. What else does it mean? Sameness. It means socialism. Equity is socialism. Equity is Marxism. Equal outcomes. Everyone gets the same. The only type of society in which everyone gets the same is socialism. Equity is equal outcome. So every time we see the word equity, we know we are dealing with someone who's pushing socialism. Now, does anyone recognize Emily? This is a tough one. I'm really going to see who's been paying attention now. Does anyone here recognize Emily from a recent presentation that we watched that maybe wasn't a public presentation? That maybe was a spy stream presentation that I have not released yet. Does anyone recognize Emily from a recent spy stream presentation that maybe not Emily Drabinski? This is not the American Library Association woman. I understand why you guys would say that, though. I do understand, like, she does look like Emily Drabinsky, so that was a really good guess, actually. We may have seen a very capitalism-oriented presentation recently for SpyStream that I haven't released yet, and it was one of the most woke trainings that we've seen, and they gave us all these great slides with all these images of capitalism. And I haven't released it yet because there might be another presentation that I'm going to be spy streaming from this organization, and I don't want them to know I have it. Yes, Andrew, it was the Harry Potter one. Yeah, now we're cooking. Now we're cooking. Yep. Same person. Same intersectionality association in Oregon is the same person we're going to be watching today for our gender basics. So that was a nice little fun coincidence. So that's pretty great. We've seen her before, and if you haven't seen her before, then head over to the Substack, which I'll talk about in a second. Head over to the Substack and watch one of the spy streams I did last week. Maybe the intersectionality one, maybe. But don't tell them we have their presentation. Shh. Yes. The intersectional Kraken. Exactly. So we know this is going to be a good woke presentation is what I'm saying. Like, we know this one's going to be full of socialism and gender cringe, even though Emily appears to be a lesbian with she, her pronouns, still uber woke. But you know what was really great about this is Emily gave us all her slides to the presentation. So we have all of her intersectionality gender slides that illustrates what the American Association of University Women is paying for in their professional development training. And we have a list of definition of terms. And I really do like it when they define terms for us because that comes in very, very handy. And they gave us a list of do's and don'ts for gender inclusive language. And I got to be honest, guys, I didn't know that doctors and nurses and parents were saying that babies were female bodied or male bodied when they're born female or born male. I'm pretty basic with this stuff. I kind of thought that they were just called like a boy or a girl. But no, apparently we've already moved past female bodied and or boy and girl to female bodied and male bodied, and now that's gone out of style too. And now we have to say assigned male at birth or assigned female at birth, and we're also not allowed to say ladies and gentlemen. We have to say everyone, folks, and honored guests because we are moving away from binary language to language that is more inclusive of all people. So that's really nice of Emily. We're not allowed to say mailman or fireman or policeman. We have to say mail clerk, firefighter, or police officer. You're definitely not allowed to call someone it. So these are really good tips, and we appreciate Emily for sharing them with us. And we're going to see more of that in this presentation that we're going to watch today called Gender Justice: The Basics, that was presented to the American Association of University Women of Oregon. And so that's what we're watching today, guys. I hope you're ready for it. In case you haven't yet, before we get started, please make sure you head over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com, and make sure you are subscribed. You can subscribe for free, but if you want to fund the independent journalism that your influencers are going to steal from me later and pretend that they came up with, then you can sign up to support my work for $8 a month or $80 a year. And then you guys are not only going to be the first to know when a new story is broken because it'll get emailed right out to you, but also when it shows up on your conservative influencer's Twitter account and they're pretending that they're the ones that came up with it, not only will you know where it came from, but you will have actually funded the journalism that your influencers are using for clicks, clout, and cash, because someone has to do it, and God knows it's not them. And the only way I'm able to do this, guys, is because I am funded by you. You are the ones that allow me to spend so much time rifling through the bowels of the internet to find woke nonsense, reading documents, piecing stuff together, making clips, doing streams like this, etc., 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 even occasionally doing undercover journalism, which I really do appreciate. And well, I am going to be starting a new tracker. I'm going to be doing that. I just didn't quite get to it today. And I'm completely grassroots funded, guys. I can't do it without you. All jokes aside, please head over to the Substack, support the work I'm doing. You get lots of perks, and you will fund some of the best independent journalism on the internet, if I do say so myself. All right, let's dig into it. Oh yeah, I bet Emily's going to say capitalism. Yeah, there was a lot of capitalism in the last presentation we watched with Emily, for sure. Let's dig into it. We got about an hour to go. We are watching Gender Justice, the basics. By the way, pop quiz for the chat. What do they mean when they say gender justice? What does gender justice look like? What does the left believe like will achieve gender justice? Do you guys know? Gender justice means gender equity. Okay, what does gender equity mean? Gender revolution. Okay, what does that mean though? Getting rid of the gender binary. Gender justice equals liberating gender from capitalism, which means getting rid of the gender binary, that there is no difference between the two genders. So they want to abolish all gender. Gender justice means abolishing the gender binary, liberating people from capitalism because capitalism created the gender binary. And we need to liberate people from the gender binary in order to fight capitalism. Liberation from the binary. Liberate means to free yourself from, abolish means to get rid of, ending the gender binary, freedom from the capitalist gender binary. Patriarchy is another word for the gender binary. So every time you guys hear the word patriarchy, that is a reference to the gender binary, which was created by capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership. If you are new to me and it sounds like I'm just babbling off words and making shit up, please ask questions. I really mean that. If you're new to this and this seems a little crazy and you aren't following, please ask questions in the chat. There's nothing wrong with being new. There's nothing wrong with not knowing this stuff, but I want to make sure I'm bringing everyone along with me. Liberation from gender. It doesn't mean conformity. It doesn't mean conformity. That's a little bit off, but I understand why you said that. It's just a little bit off. Abolish the binary. Abolish the gender binary, which destroys the nuclear family, and that solves Marx's social reproduction problem. Exactly. All right. And now you're whining, Diego, so you can go into a timeout, and when you learn how not to whine, because that wasn't a question, Diego, that was whining and complaining. Facts don't care about your feelings, bro. I've seen you whine more than once in my chat. I don't like it. Guys, I have 2 rules in my chat. This is not like every other chat on the internet. Number 1, don't be a dick. Do not insult me. Do not insult anyone else in the chat. I can do whatever I want because this is my house. You don't have to be here. Number 2, no whining. I cannot emphasize this enough. My life has been turned upside down because of this work that I have done every single day for like the last 3.5 years. You guys have no idea the amount of bullshit that I have to put up with on a day-to-day basis in order to do what I do. So when you come into the chat and whine at me because you don't like my tone, I'm going to make the assumption that you're a snowflake that is not focused on things that actually matter. And I'm just going to remove you entirely. I don't want to hear your whining. If you don't like me, you don't have to be here, and you can go and avail yourself of everyone else on the internet that's doing this. I don't really care anymore. Facts don't care about your feelings, and that's just the way it goes. I love how they all complain about me and my tone, but some live for Laura Loomer. Exactly. It's kind of like it's not about my tone at all. It's just about me telling them things they don't want to hear and not voting for their guy. Whatever. They quickly show themselves and we remove them. Let's get this party started, guys. We are watching Gender Justice, the basics. Please mount the like button if you have not already. And let's see what happened.
Or worry about asking the wrong question or showing what you think is your ignorance. We are all in the same boat here. And I mean that seriously. We're in particular in the same boat because we're members of AUW. The backbone, the heart and soul of our organization is helping women and girls move forward and to identify and combat the sexism that can impede this process. So to Emily, as you know, she was born and raised in Ashland. As she states in her webpage, and I can attest, Emily has dedicated her career, indeed, I think her life almost, other than her family, to unearthing and dismantling the many ways gender justice harms us all. And I think we met in 2015. I'm not entirely sure, but you were most ably serving as the executive director of the Women's Foundation of Oregon. As a result of her work on the Equal Pay Act and numerous other projects, in 2017, she was chosen to receive the AUW Oregon Breaking Barriers Award. Believe me, it was an award which was well-deserved. I also found out that she was named the Nonprofit Leader of the Year by the Center for Women's Leadership. Woohoo!
Great.
So throughout the years, Emily has made, boo doodles, lots, great numbers, huge numbers of public appearances, given talks, and she's written a number of impressive and highly relevant articles. Right now, she's the principal in Emily Evans' consulting practice, which focuses on advancing gender justice and guiding intersectional change. So, Emily, take it away.
Yay! Thanks, Trish. It's been such a pleasure to
Okay.
be in community
Can
with
I just say, first of all, like, I know I'm dressed like the Unabomber right now, but there was actually a time when I did corporate training, and when I was doing corporate training, I didn't show up to a presentation that I was getting paid thousands of dollars for, dressed in a flannel and a baseball hat. Like, you gotta be like a little mindful of the fact that you're literally getting paid thousands of dollars for your time. And like, this is like not appropriate, but this is what they do. They try to queer professional development. So they go to, they do these corporate trainings that they get paid all this money for. They swear at people. I never, like, I'll swear like a sailor on my channel because this is my house. I can swear in my house. But if I go to a corporate training, I'm not going to swear. Like, if I go to a corporate training, I'm going to look presentable. It's just good manners.
Over the past, probably my whole life, honestly. Both my mom and my gram, who are deeply inspirational to me, particularly my gram, who I love so dearly and took so much inspiration from. She has
welcome, Kate,
AUW membership cards from way back, and was the dean of women and then the dean of students at SOU in Southern Oregon way back in the day. And it's just a delight to be here in community with y'all. Super meaningful to me. So this is meant to be a conversation. Please, I'm working with my 10-year-old on not interrupting people, but please interrupt. Just please interrupt. Just pop in with a question. Please ask anything. This is about learning and community together. This is about the work that is so important to me and I know is critical to y'all. So just pop in.
Yo, like, speaking of Fetterman in the Senate, isn't it funny that Fetterman got hit on the head or something and he started saying like a lot of conservative stuff, or like reasonably moderate stuff, maybe not fully conservative, but he kind of like, Fetterman is tiptoeing over to like the other side of the aisle. And as soon as Fetterman started tiptoeing over to the other side of the aisle, all of a sudden, conservatives stopped caring that he was wearing a hoodie and baseball or basketball shorts to the Senate. All of a sudden, the dress code violations that they read about for like weeks and weeks and weeks are totally fine because Fetterman is tiptoeing over to their side of the aisle. Isn't that funny?
Have a question, pop it in the chat, anything that works well, and we'll get started here. I have 42 slides and listen, 52 minutes, so we're going to do great work. LGBTQIA2S and gender justice. We'll get into all what that alphabet soup means in a minute, but let's talk about how we're going to move through
lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, intersect, asexual, two-spirit, everyone else.
Through the next 52 minutes together. We're going to talk a bit about grounding concepts, a bit about the anatomy of oppression and the way that it's interconnected, gender at the individual level, gender in society. We're going to have some great memes, terrific memes, I can promise.
No.
We're going to talk a bit about LGBTQ myths and facts, a little bit about gender and policy, and particularly its relevance here in Oregon in the next couple of years, and about LGBTQ allyship. All right, let's talk a bit about some founding definitions. And I know we love a definition. I know we love reading.
Look at this.
Trish, my good friend, would you
look at this. They gave us a definition of gender justice. Gender justice is inherently intersectional, which means more than just gender, and therefore can only be achieved when all forms of oppression cease to exist. Guys, pop quiz for the chat. In order for all forms of expression to cease to exist, what needs to happen? What do they need to do in order to eliminate all forms of oppression and therefore achieve gender justice? What does that mean? When capitalism is destroyed, when there is no capitalism, when gender and race are abolished and capitalism is abolished. They need to overthrow capitalism. Capitalism needs to be abolished. The end of capitalism, down with capitalism, equity. How are we defining capitalism specifically? The left defines capitalism as private property ownership. That is the only definition that matters. It does not matter if you disagree with them. You will not be able to debunk them. They don't care. They define it specifically and exclusively as private property ownership. Any other discussion you're having about capitalism and crony capitalism and corrupt capitalism, Hotep Jesus, doesn't fucking matter, because that's not what the left is talking about. And so every single time you focus on things that are not the left's definition, you're not actually accomplishing much of anything, and you're just looking dumb, Hotep Jesus, to people who actually understand what the left is saying. Means to abolish capitalism, all forms of oppression cease to exist, the gender binary is abolished. Seems like a fancy way of getting rid of those who disagree with them. Nope, it's not about people. It's only and exclusively about capitalism, Kate. That's okay, though. You're new, so it's okay. It's okay to be a beginner. We'll teach you. Gender justice equals reproductive justice equals climate justice. Yup, all of them are interrelated. Intersectionality means to, yes, but I wouldn't phrase it like this, because that's going to be confusing for people who don't know what you're talking about. They want to not exactly with a police. They don't want to replace capitalism with a police state, because they're going to abolish the police as well. So that's not 100% correct. No, they didn't. They're still, the governor is shilling for child protective services. So that is, again, conservatives are their own worst enemy there. Anyway, let's keep going.
Willing to read this slide around gender justice for us?
Well, gender justice is inherently intersectional, and therefore can only be achieved when all forms of oppression cease to exist. And gender justice would be a world where no one experiences any gender-based barriers to thriving.
I love that. I think there was a time where we would have defined gender justice as something related to a binary and about women getting the short end of the stick, which is certainly a big and important portion of it. And it is, in fact, a much broader concept, which we'll unpack together today. Thanks so much.
Well, they can't define it as a binary anymore, because they need to abolish the gender binary, which means get rid of all men and all women and create a world full of non-binary people in order to achieve gender justice. Gender justice means no more women. It means no more men. No women, no men, no gender, they, thems. That's it. That's what they're going for. If you don't understand why, please let me know in the chat. Yeah, Cody, this is very true. Ancillary things like crony capitalism, which is what Hotep Jesus complains about because he doesn't understand what the actual problem is, are just soft ways that the socialist left get you to outright fight capitalism. So basically, people like Hotep Jesus that don't understand how the left defines capitalism, they're literally playing right into the hands of the left and doing their dirty work. Hotep Jesus, and someone can please clip this and send it to him, maybe. Hotep Jesus is basically a useful idiot of the socialist left because he doesn't understand what he's talking about because he never took the time to listen because he's not smart enough to. Oh, yeah. Kate, grab a drink. Alcohol, preferably. If you're sober, that's cool too. Get a nice tea. Stick around for a while. It's going to get way creepier. It's going to get worse. Apparently he did a video about me he claimed that I don't understand the left and I don't understand what capitalism means. I didn't watch it because I'm not wasting my time on that stuff. But I heard about it. I heard about it. Whatevs. And he didn't block me, I blocked him because far too stupid to interact with that guy. He's far too stupid to interact with me. I can't lower myself to I just can't. I'm sorry, I can't.
Trish. Let's see. How about my friend Penny? Penny, are you willing to read to us a bit about intersectionality? It's been a minute, my friend.
Yes. Intersectionality, the concept that race, class, gender, and other individual characteristics intersect with one another to form unique and individualized experiences of oppression. The idea has been around since the 1800s, born out of the clashes between the feminist and the Black resistance.
Intersectionality has been around since the 1800s. They're just making that shit up. That's not real.
Movements. It began with a focus on race and gender specifically, but has expanded to include other social categories, for example, class, sexuality, and ability.
Intersectionality is really, I have a whole nother presentation which we could talk about in terms of the shortcomings and harm that white feminism in particular has inflicted upon many, many folks that don't share the privilege that most of the white feminists have. And intersectionality to me is the deep antidote to that.
What is the form of privilege? Pop quiz for the chat. What is the form of privilege that white feminists have that non-white feminists do not have? What is she really saying? What is the form of privilege that white feminists have that non-white feminists do not have? Now, of course, I agree with her. White women cause every problem in the world. I couldn't agree more. White feminists especially. Like, we really should just, can we just round up all of the feminists? I don't mind the Black feminists. Can we just round up all the white feminists and, put them in a camp? So can we make them I'm not advocating for concentration camps or anything, but, if I was advocating for concentration camps, I would put the white feminists in the camps. Can anyone get on board with that? Am I just okay, maybe it's a dream. It's a dream. Anyway, back to the question about privilege. What privilege do white feminists have that non-white feminists don't have? They are the beneficiary of capitalism. They are the beneficiaries of capitalism. Every time you hear whiteness, it does not mean skin color. It is a reference to capitalism. They have greater access to private property, which capitalism is defined as private property. They have more capitalism, beneficiary of capitalism. There is something to be said about generational wealth. They want to eliminate all generational wealth. That's private property as well. So that answer can indirectly work. They benefit from whiteness, which is capitalism. Benefit from whiteness. White means a beneficiary of, well, white privilege means a beneficiary of capitalism. They have access to the proceeds of capitalism. Benefit of capitalism. Capitalists, they have access to capital, aka private property. Exactly. Well done, guys.
It's the understanding that when you crosshatch gender disadvantage, sexism, patriarchy, etc., with other forms of oppression, that it compounds and exponentializes the experience of oppression. And that folks who hold privilege within a patriarchal system, which includes white women in particular, and particularly white heterosexual
Capital.
cis women, that is incumbent upon us to understand the intersectionality. And that's really the core of my practice. And I am so glad to be able to be here with folks who I know who are in community with me related to that.
Emily, what do you mean by cis women?
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a minute, but it means folks who do not identify as transgender or not trans folks. We are going to get into that in a hot minute. Okay, I feel like I've called on most of the folks who I know. So
the unearned and mostly unacknowledged societal advantage that a restricted group of people has over another group. Every time you hear references to privilege, it is a reference to having greater amounts of private property or capital, or access to resources that greater amounts of private property or capital get you. So you have access to bank loans, because that's a form of private property. You have access to buying houses. That's a form of private property. You have more money to spend on food and clothing and everyday essentials. That's all private property. So you can see how this works. It's a really, every time you hear the word privilege, no matter if it has to do with race or gender or, heteronormativity or whatever the hell, it doesn't matter. It is always a reference back to capitalism, because they're saying you have access to more private resources than other people.
In other groups, I know if I ask for a volunteer, there will be crickets, but in this group, I'm ready to dive in. I'm certain that somebody's going to be willing to read the definition of privilege. Come on.
How about Pat Lehman?
Yeah, go Pat.
Right. Okay. Privilege, the unearned and mostly unacknowledged societal advantage that a restricted group of people has over another group.
Absolutely. So this is things that we define as pretty arbitrary. I mean, in one word, we could call it eye color or handedness or any other type of privilege. Mostly in our world, we have it to do.
Kate is asking a question, and it's a good question for people who are new. So I'm appreciative that you asked it, Kate. So a Black person with mass private property can have white privilege. Yes. Exactly. In fact, do you guys mind if I take a quick detour? Because I want to show Kate Kimberly Crenshaw literally saying that. I just want to show it real quick. Hang on. I'm going to get my playlist up. I hope I can find it real quick. I want to provide Kate proof of this. Let me see. I just need to find it in my playlist. Hang on. So what I'm looking for is not of Kimberly Crenshaw. I'm looking for a clip of Cheryl Harris from a speech she gave in 2014. Here it is. Found it. So this is, God damn it. Nope, that's not what I wanted. YouTube. Nope. God damn it. Hang on. My playlist is not working. It keeps, there we go. Okay. Here we go. So this is Cheryl Harris. Cheryl Harris wrote a paper called Whiteness is Property. And this is on the 20th anniversary of the release of this paper. And what we're going to hear Cheryl Harris say is explicitly this, Kate. Explicitly this. You do not have to be white in order to engage in white privilege, and whiteness is available to Black people too. So let's listen. I think this is the right one.
Post-racialism privileges.
Oh, no, it's not the right one. Hang on. this one is the right one.
Secondly, post-racialism's commitment to protect some value in whiteness, however relative, what Derek Bell called the promise not to be the face at the bottom of the well, it coexists with expanding whiteness to encompass non-whites. And I think Chuck was alluding to this a little bit yesterday. Post-racial whiteness is conditionally available to persons of any racial group, even some blacks.
So whiteness includes people who are not white and is available to blacks. Let's just watch it one more time because I know it's quick.
Whiteness is not a skin color or even a racial type.
Well, there it is.
It is a social relation constructed on.
She said it in that one too, but I want to watch this clip again.
Secondly, post-racialism's commitment to protect some value in whiteness, however relative, what Derek Bell called the promise not to be the face at the bottom of the well, it coexists with expanding whiteness to encompass non-whites. And I think Chuck was alluding to this a little bit yesterday. Post-racial whiteness is conditionally available to persons of any racial group, even some blacks.
See?
Whiteness is not a skin color or even a racial.
Pause. Stop playing.
Secondly, post-racial.
It's just auto playing. It's auto playing. But I'm glad we got a chance to watch that because here is the thing. Here is this thing. They still say white privilege. Douglas, you have got to wrap your head around this. Whiteness does not mean skin color. Whiteness means capitalism. Whiteness means access to private property. That's what it means. They're not conflating the two. This is how socialist, speaking the language of socialist is different than speaking English. They have a completely different definition of the word than you do. And no amount of arguing and no amount of debunking is going to change that. Whiteness means capitalism because the left believes capitalism created slavery because slavery was owning people as private property. Slavery created systemic racism. And every time the left is making a reference to whiteness, white supremacy, racism, they are not talking about skin color. They are talking about the system that supports racism. They're talking about the system, the institution. That's what systemic racism or institutional racism is. It's not a reference to race. It's a reference to the system, and the system is capitalism. That's why the Los Angeles Times called Larry Elder the blackface of white supremacy. That's why Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And we can go example after example after example, but I want to make sure that this is the hardest concept. This is the hardest concept to wrap your head around. If you can understand this concept, you will learn how to speak socialist. If you cannot wrap your head around this concept, you cannot learn how to speak socialist. Everything else is easier to understand once you understand this. Does anyone have any questions? It's a really difficult transition in your head to make. But once you get it, once you just start seeing that every time they say whiteness, racism, whatever it is, and you in your head think capitalism, private property, and you just swap the words out, then it starts to make a lot more sense. See, I told you, Kate, just stick around. It's going to get crazier. Wait until you find out about the nuclear family, Kate.
To do with race, to do with gender, to do with class. And it means that it's unearned and largely unacknowledged on an overt level advantage that a particular group that is in the in-group has over the out-group.
Hang on. Stop making fucking excuses. This is where I'm going to turn into Bobby Knight. I'm the Bobby Knight of teaching people this shit. Stop making fucking excuses for why you can't do something. This is not about you. It's not about your feelings. If you want to understand the left, then you put on the big boy pants and you do what is required. And it doesn't matter how you feel about it, bro. You do not have to agree with someone in order to understand their perspective. And the reason that the right is losing so badly to the left is because they refuse to understand who the left is and what they care about. So when you're saying I can't do it, it's too much. It's too much. It's too much. What you're really saying is I want to lose. I want to kick and scream and throw a hissy fit and a temper tantrum because I want to lose. That's what you're saying. You're here because you want to learn. But you've got to get over this idea that you can dictate the definitions for other people, because you can't.
That is privilege. All right, Trish, you want to help me call on another eager volunteer?
How about Wanda? Wanda.
Okay.
Oh, Wanda.
Using the power or privilege granted by your identity to render a form of service or solidarity to an individual or group who holds less power or privilege.
I love this because it's fundamentally about leverage. I don't know if we have any physics folks, but or simple machine folks. It's about leveraging the privilege that you have based on any part of your identity to be in service or solidarity to a group who does not have access to that privilege. And the beauty of this is we can all do it, and we can all do it every day.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the gears. I don't know if y'all loved clip art in the late 90s or early 2000s as much as I did, but I love this gear analogy. I love the clip art, and we're totally going to go with it. So if we talk about the anatomy of oppression, we have a series of gears here, and it starts down at the bottom, and we'll work our way up, and we'll give examples relative to the gender oppression, but particularly the queer and trans experience all the way up. So personal or self. This is the smallest gear. This is just what's rattling around in your own head. Your private beliefs, your prejudices, ideas that we have that include forms of internalized oppression or superiority or what have you. And that's just, a series of often unfortunate thoughts that are rattling around in your own head, particularly if you have a form of intersectional oppression or marginalization. So this might go, God, it really sucks that I don't have access to a bathroom where I can.
So when they're referring to racism, I don't think we will in this one. I didn't see it. When they're referring to racism and why whiteness means capitalism, they're referring to racism on the systemic or the institutional level. And it is capitalism that perpetuates laws, practices, and policies, and the norms that perpetuate oppression. That's a reference to capitalism. And then systemic is a reference to values, societal expectations, broader social institutions. I'm kind of surprised they didn't have some reference to capitalism in this top one, but they do, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So that's what they're referring to when they say whiteness means capitalism, or excuse me, when they're saying whiteness. They're not referring to the personal or the self or the individual or the interpersonal. They're referring to the institutional or organizational or systemic. Does that make sense?
Can feel comfortable. I probably shouldn't go in that bathroom. I feel worried about it. People might misgender me. I'm not feeling great. And that's just my own experience rattling around in my own head. That's a small scare. And then we move up, and this is individual and interpersonal. This is what often folks think of oppression or bigotry or marginalization, the actual bits and pieces between people, conversations between people, biased speech and behaviors towards each other or towards stakeholders. These are things that happen on a day-to-day basis. So this is if I, get on plane and I get misgendered, somebody uses the wrong pronouns for me, or I get somebody experiences a slur when they are just trying to buy their kids popsicles at the minute market or what have you. This is individual and interpersonal harm or hardship. Then we move up one level to the institutional or the organizational. These are the laws and the policies and the norms that perpetuate oppression at a structural level or an institutional level. So this is like, this is really boring, but for folks who are not married in certain states, but who are domestically partnered, if they get healthcare through their partner's healthcare, that's often taxed as imputed income. Anyway, it's boring and technical, but it means that those folks actually end up paying much more in their taxes simply because they're a queer couple and because they're domestic partners, as opposed to being a straight couple and married legally under the law. So that's an institutional, organizational form of oppression, hardship, marginalization. And then we move to the big bad, the really gruesome and omnipresent form, which is the big gear, the structural, the systemic, and the cultural. These are the values, the norms, the expectations, the ways of thinking and knowing and being that inform how we move through the world. All of us move through the world, whether we like it or not. So this includes things like, I never saw a movie that had a happy ending for a queer character until I was long graduated from college. Right? Like it was, those movies, the queer movies were grim. Everybody died or died by suicide or got their kids taken away. There's something super sad, right? Like that's just a cultural message that your life was going to be misery if you were a queer person. And that's the big gear. But let me point out two important things about these gears. The first is that the mechanism works from the biggest gear down. No child is born ever feeling these feelings of oppression, this systemic cultural bigotry. That the smallest gear only ever gets influence from the biggest gear down. But in a beautifully hopeful measure, if you jam up any of these gears, starting with the self, it cranks up the whole mechanism. It messes up the entire structure of it, right? You can just jam in one little stick, starting with this.
So what she's saying is, check this out. She's saying that if you want to fuck up the system, that all you need to do is fuck up just one of these gears. Just one of them. And that gear, because you fucked it up, is going to fuck up the entire system. Okay? So think about how we can do that to the self. If you convince an entire generation or a significant portion of an entire generation of kids that they are gender queer or gender non-binary, you have fucked up the self gear, which is then going to jam up the entire system. This is why they took over the schools, guys. This is why, if you have kids in public schools, you need to get them out. Because it is true that they're eliciting a cultural revolution in our country. They're trying to overthrow capitalism and install Marxism. That's real. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is real. And regular viewers of my channel can see this loud and clear. That is, and I would have thought this was crazy like 4 years ago too. So like I know some people still think this is crazy, but the Marxist revolution is real. They're trying to transform culture, but they're doing it through the schools where they are convincing an entire, well, at least like, let's say 1/3 of students like think they're gender queer, gender non-binary, gender fluid. They're doing it by getting the generation in school to jam up the self. And in the jamming up of the individual identities, that's going to jam up every other part of the system. Does everyone understand that? Does that make sense? That's what they're doing. This is why they introduced gender ideology. Gender ideology is an attack on capitalism because it's an attack on the gender binary. It's also an attack on the nuclear family, which they believe uphold capitalism. All roads lead back to capitalism. The culture they want to destroy is grounded in private property, but all they need to do is get people to see themselves differently, and that changes the entire culture.
Self or the individual and the interpersonal, and that gums up the whole works, which is maybe the most hopeful message I have tonight, which is to say, if you start doing that good work, even rattling around between your own two ears, that starts to mess up the anatomy and the functionality of oppression. And bless everybody for being here at, what is this, 7:20 on a wintry Tuesday night to learn about how we can mess up that smallest gear and therefore start to turn the tide of oppression in a different direction.
She literally just said it. How can we mess up that smallest gear to turn the tide of oppression? You guys hear that? Let's rewind.
Everybody for being here at, what is this, 7:20 on a wintry Tuesday night to learn about how we can mess up that smallest gear and therefore start to turn the tide of oppression in a different direction.
Ding.
Okay, let's talk about gender at the individual level. This is really in the guts of it, y'all, and I'm so excited to have folks stay here with me. Okay, this is what the cis heteronormative white supremacist patriarchy tells you is true. That when you are born, or any baby on the planet is born, that there is a binary.
The cis heteronormative white supremacist patriarchy. That basically covers all of those. Are all different ways of saying capitalism. Cis is a way of is reference to people who are not queer. Heteronormative is a reference to straight couples instead of couples who queer the system. White supremacy is capitalism, and patriarchy is also capitalism.
Of biological sex assigned at birth. The sex assigned at birth. A beautiful poet and thinker and influencer called Alok Menon says that they call this genital hieroglyphics. This means that somebody somewhere, usually a medical practitioner, looks.
Hang on, Maldi's saying surprised homonormative wasn't included. Maldi, they actually generally don't use it because they really don't like when the gays aren't queer. So they don't like to admit that most gay couples are actually just normal people who just want to marry someone and settle down and have a house and a dog and kids. Because that messes up their entire system. When the gay couples adhere to normativity, that messes up everything. And so usually they don't point it out if they don't have to. But if they're asked about it, that's when they'll make references to homonormativity. Homonormativity, for people who don't know, is basically gay people who have ascended to capitalism, which means they live normal lives and have families.
For about 2 seconds at the genitals of a newborn child and predicts an entire lifetime of thing based on those 2 seconds and their perception of their external genitalia. So you're going to tell you how that person identifies, how they dress, how they speak, how they walk, how much they're going to earn, who they marry, who they love, which is bananas.
It's almost
that's a bananas thing, right? That would be like you take 2 seconds of a look at some kiddo when they're born and tell them whether or not they're going to like tennis, whether they're going to be right-handed or left-handed, whether or not they're going to, be a Blazers fan. All these things that you're going to predict about them based on a momentary glance at their body when they're born, which is bananas. There's no other place on earth that we do this.
Well, of course, no one actually does what Emily is describing. Emily is literally making all of that up. But there is no institution on the planet that ascribes to gender stereotypes more than gender ideology does.
So silly. Okay, so this is the binary that we're told and we are groomed into. And this is what actually exists for all folks, the spectrum of gender and identity, these beautiful spectrums. We're going to unpack it all together, so don't worry about it. We'll take it bit by bit. This is what actually exists. 4 different vectors that are not a binary. There are, in fact, a spectrum. So it's a beautiful layer cake that has a spectrum within it. This is what the cis heteronormative white supremacist patriarchy tells us is true. And this is what is actually true.
You're welcome, Megan Kelly.
And so much more
You're
interesting
welcome.
And so much more beautiful. Okay,
Megan
so let's
Kelly,
talk about biological sex.
scrap.
This is sex assigned at birth. you might say, all right, listen, Emily, I'm here with you. I got it. I know there's a spectrum. I know there's other bits and pieces of things that really matter, but you can't tell me that there isn't some clear binary that happens with biology, that within the human body is really dictated by facts and science. To which I would say, bummer for you, because turns out you can have male genitalia or female genitalia, but there are at least 2% of babies born every year all over the world who are intersex, which means that their genitalia, if you look at them, are not easily categorized into male or female. They are some beautiful mix, and that's wonderful. And we're talking about millions and millions of people who have genitalia that cannot be easily categorized. So this is nature telling us, in fact, that it resists a binary and that it is, in fact, a spectrum.
Wow.
And there may be,
Emily,
evolutionary biologists. In fact, I'm sure there are among us who are saying, you know what, but genetics. Okay, sure. Anatomy is anatomy, and there may be some, things that are not easily categorized within anatomy, but actually, let's just take a look at genetics. There's X, there's Y, there's XX, there's XY, and that's the end of it. Bummer also for you, because that's not the case either. Even within genetics, we know that just the presence of chromosomes are a beautiful mix. XXX, XYY, XXY, XO. There's all kinds of things, even within our DNA, that are resisting a binary. So no matter where we look, whether it's other organisms in nature, whether it's the form of anatomy and genitalia, whether it's literally the code that makes up our own being, we see it resisting a binary. So even if we try to be reductive, we have the beauty of nature telling us that that's not the case, even if we are coded to try to think of it that way. Again,
that was a crazy clip.
pop in with questions. We are ready.
I'm clipping that.
Okay, next. So we're going down this layer cake. The next.
Why does this not matter, Douglas? Well, this is a pop quiz for everyone. Douglas says the logical fallacies in this person's beliefs are profound. Why does this not matter? I usually ask people to refrain from stuff like this for a very specific reason. Why does this not matter? Because debunking them does no good. They're winning. We don't debunk them because they are winning, and they are winning massively. And anyone who tells you they are not winning is lying to you to try to get your money. Socialists don't care, and they are winning. Propaganda doesn't care about facts. We're here to study how the people use the language. If we spent all day debunking them, we would actually never concentrate on what they're actually saying. We are learning their language to actually understand what is being said and how to stop it. They appeal to emotions. Facts don't matter. And I'm really trying to help people when I tell you to stop debunking them. Because this is like an endless cycle. It's like you debunk them over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. It never makes any difference. Never fixes anything. Never changes anything. But you keep doing it anyway. What is the very definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, expecting different results, but you're never going to get different results. So we got to try something different. I know you guys want to debunk them. I really do, but you're going to see the problem in a whole new way once you stop debunking them. Terry over on X says, this is so eye-opening. Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet, Terry. Stick around a while. Appreciate it, though.
Level is gender identity. First, we had biological sex. Now we're talking about gender identity. This is how you feel on the inside. This has nothing whatsoever to do with how you present on the outside, with how other people see you, with how whoever looked at your junk when you were born determined anything. This is entirely about how you feel in your own heart and your own mind. And this is on a spectrum from man to woman to anywhere in the beauty in between, transgender, genderqueer, non-binary. This is who you know yourself to be on the inside. And this is the first space where we start to see what we call the difference between being trans and being cis. So if we go back to these spectrums here, on this first spectrum of biological sex, most folks think of it as a binary, right? Male and female. And if on this first layer in our layer cake, your identity, who you know yourself to be on the inside, does not align with the sex you were assigned at birth, we call that trans. And my Latin folks will know that trans actually means across. It just means not straight down, not in alignment with what it was originally meant to be. So we see this here, that anything that is not straight up and down, we call that trans. And that is where the oppression and the marginalization starts to happen. We see that folks who are not in alignment, which is cis is also a Latin root, meant to be in alignment. So if you are assigned female at birth and you identify as a woman and your gender expression is feminine and you are heterosexual, which means you're attracted to men, that's all going to be in alignment. And that is all going to be cis. But at the moment at which you start to transgress, you start to go against what is expected of you based on your gender assigned at birth, that's what we call the trans experience. And that, first and foremost, is related to gender identity.
Emily, we have a question. If one says not non-binary, does that mean intersex?
It's a great question. So intersex is to do with biological sex. That's to do with the presentation.
What has just happened is the old women in the American Association for University Women are saying they think the women watching this presentation are probably useful idiots, so I don't need to be mean to be insulting to them, but they probably think they think you can be non-binary. Like they haven't yet figured out that non-binary has nothing to do with biology. And so they're like, non-binary must mean intersex. That must mean what it means, because they haven't yet figured out that like we are doing a complete separation of biology and gender. It's kind of funny. They're confused. Emily's about to confuse them even more.
Of genitalia. So that means that if you look at someone's external genitalia, it's difficult to discern whether it's a penis, whether it's a vulva, and there are a million beautiful permutations within that. And that is how your genitalia appears.
A million.
That's actually totally independent from your actual gender identity, which means that's how you know yourself. This has to do with how your genitalia look largely when you are born. This has to do with...
Kate is asking a great question. So trans does not mean to physically transition to another sex. Okay. The answer to this, Kate, is a little bit more complicated. So first off, trans and queer are not the same thing. Trans is about transitioning from man to woman or woman to man. It upholds the gender binary, so we like it. I'm not saying we want everyone to be trans or anything, but like we don't mind normal trans people that transition from man to woman or woman to man because they uphold the gender binary. That's good. We want people to uphold the gender binary. We want people to say there are men and there are women and I am one of those things. And even if they switch it, they're still one of those things. So they're still upholding the gender binary. Queer is a far left political ideology that wants to abolish the gender binary. That is what we have a problem with. Now, the confusing part comes in because sometimes queer Marxists will identify themselves as trans, so they'll say things like non-binary and trans. And that can be confusing for people, or they'll say queer and trans. But what you have to understand is the distinction that needs to be made is, do they want to uphold the gender binary or not? Because queer Marxists have also messed with the vocabulary so that when they say trans, they do not mean transition. They mean transcend or transform. As in, they want to transcend gender, abolish the gender binary. It's transcending gender, or transforming gender into something different. So that's the distinction that needs to be made, and I know it's a complicated one, but but I hope that makes sense. You can be trans as in transition and not queer. I wouldn't say they're anti-trans, but they believe that all trans people should be queer, but not most trans people are not queer. Most trans people are just normal people that just want to live their lives and be left alone and do their thing. Most trans people don't ascribe to this, but they believe everyone should, because their ultimate goal is to completely eliminate the gender binary. And so they want as many trans people in the ideology as possible, but I wouldn't say that they don't like it when trans people are not in their ideology, but I wouldn't say they're anti-trans. I hope that makes sense. Douglas, I already told you about debunking, Douglas. This is going to get a lot easier for you when you stop debunking. I promise you. We're trying to help you, bro. You've got to stop debunking if you want to learn this.
With who you know you are in your own brain. This is about what other people think about you and assess you to be, largely when you're a child. And this is about who you know yourself to be over time. And this is a perfect question to illustrate the fact that what we've been told is that all of these things are linked. But what is true is that all of these are independent variables. None of them are related to each other. They are related because the patriarchy tells us they're related, and the patriarchy is trying to oppress us based on the alignment or misalignment of these various individual characteristics. These things are all independent. And that is the work of a lifetime to try to separate these variables from one another. What a great question. Okay, so we've done sex assigned at birth, we've done gender identity, and now we're going one layer cake down to gender expression. This is how you present yourself to others. This is how you walk, how you dress, how you talk, how you show up in the world, and the gendered stereotypes that traffic in those ways that you show up in the world. So the spectrum here is from masculine to feminine, and in the middle is androgynous or non-binary. And this is everything to do with how you present yourself to other folks. You know, this is the fact that like boys wear blue and girls wear pink, which is silly because in the Victorian era, that was totally backwards, but whatever. These are to do with gender norms of how we present ourselves to other folks. And again, this is entirely independent of the other components that we've been talking about. And next,
by the way, are these slides going to be available?
Absolutely. I'll send all these slides to everyone. Okay. Folks will have a chance to just marinate in them however much they like.
Great.
The next level is sexual orientation, which is who you are attracted to. And this can be broken down actually into multiple spectrums around who you're romantically attracted to, who you're physically attracted to. And the discerning among us might say, Emily, wait a minute, all these other slides have been about how you identify or how your body it looks or how your body is experienced. Why on earth would you throw in all of a sudden who you're attracted to? To which I would say, you're right. That's bananas. Why would we put that in together? That's ridiculous. Those things aren't related. Those things are independent variables.
Emily's
but we have been told and coached and punished into thinking that who you are attracted to is actually highly related to all the other components of your gender. Which
Douglas, this stuff is not just mandatory in a California college or high school. This stuff is being taught in every K through 12 school district in the country, starting in kindergarten. That is the problem that we need to solve for. And in order to solve for that, you have to learn what they're talking about. And so you got to put aside your feelings, bro. This is game time. If you don't learn, you lose. And that's just the way it goes.
Which is a falsehood. So within here, we have heterosexual, we have gay and lesbian, we have bisexual, pansexual, asexual. We have just an enormity of spectrum around sexual orientation. And what a liberating idea. What a liberating idea that we could just be people in the world and be attracted to people who we like without hardship or oppression or having to be beholden to anything. I am mindful of time, Trisha, mindful of time. Okay, so here we have, this is actually a lovely little exercise if you want to do it and map your own self. So we have your biological sex. This is actually my map. This is my map. So biological sex, our sex assigned at birth. I was assigned female at birth. And then we go down to gender identity, who I know myself to be on the inside, and I'm a woman on the inside. And that's great for me, and that feels great. And I don't experience the oppression of having a trans experience, which means all of a sudden you start to cross what you were assigned at birth. And it's not in alignment, which means cis, of what it's expected of you based on that genital hieroglyphics. But then, for me, here I come with gender expression. I'm pretty on the mask side, right? And that's the moment where oppression and marginalization starts to happen, right? Like, and sometimes that's silly. Like sometimes that's like just like a silly, boring, mundane thing. Like for instance, my wife and I were going to Mexico, where she's from, for a holiday, and I didn't have any of my shorts, and they were lost somewhere in the garage, and nobody could find them. And she was like, "Whatever, we'll just pick you up some shorts on the way." And I was like, "Babe, that doesn't work for me. I'm in a horrible no man's land between boys and men's sizes. So there's nothing it's not just easy for me to go to a regular store and pick up clothes, right? Which is dumb and boring, but that's actually an expression that was tough, you know? Or it's silly. Like we were coming back from that same vacation, and the TSA guy goes, my wife hands him our passports, and there's my son and my daughter, and I'm the taller one at this point, and the TSA guy goes, "Ma'am, I'm missing your older boy's passport," to my wife, which my son thought was hysterical, right? Like the TSA guy thought that I was her son, and that's funny. Like I thought that was funny, right? And that's, that's fine. And then, the other day I was walking.
I covered something called queer biology a while ago. You can find it on the channel. You can find it on my Substack, in which, they argue that animals are queer too. And they're teaching that to kids in school.
Down by the riverfront, just walking my dog, and I had someone say, "I'm going to kill you, you fucking lady faggot. I'm going to fucking kill you." So it ranges from being inconvenient that you can't find the shorts you want to find, to being funny, getting misgendered with your family, to being really scared, just trying to walk your dog by the riverfront, So that moment when you start to deviate can mean a whole host of things.
Yeah, I believe so. I think so.
And then this last piece, which, as the discerning among us rightly said, has nothing to do with anything that happened before it, is related to sexual orientation. And here I am, real gay about it. So this is my map. And I so encourage folks to think about where your map is and what you've experienced related to that. Even if your map is in complete alignment with what you were assigned at birth, there's a whole host of things that go along with that for you. And it's important to interrogate that on a personal level and an interpersonal level. Cultural level. Okay. All right. Let's talk about the difference between patriarchy, sexism, and misogyny. So patriarchy is the unequal allocation of power between cis men, as we know, who are in alignment all the way down with what's expected, and all other.
And that was created by capitalism, because men got to go into the workplace and women had to do the unpaid labor of raising the children in the home.
Genders. Anybody who's not a cis heterosexual man is experiencing the unequal allocation of power. I'll get to the toilet paper and the tampons in a minute. I know you're interested. Sexism is all the ways that.
Hang on. I got a great question from Deb M over on Rumble. Thank you, Deb M. Carlin, from delving into the socialism realm for the past several years, have you developed a sense of what percentage of the U.S. population are supportive and or pushing the socialist agenda? Yo, more than people think. More than people think. Of this, I am sure. Because it's completely infected the universities. If you go onto the university websites, they're written in socialist. Every university presentation we watch is given in socialist. Every education professional development training we watch is written in socialist. Anytime you see an office of equity anywhere, which exists in every school district in the country, equity means socialism. I mean, I think that a low number, a low guesstimate is 20% of the country are like far left. And because and it's just going to get greater and greater and greater because of all the indoctrination happening in the schools. Like people think like a couple years ago when I first started, people were saying maybe it was like around 12% or something like that. No, I think it's at least 20%. And I think that there is a chance that it could be significantly higher than that. I mean, it could be upwards of 30%, honestly. Maybe even more, but I think I would actually feel comfortable guessing around 30%, but I'll be like cautious and say 20%. But like the problem is that is more than enough people to cause a cultural revolution. Like if 20 to 30% of the population are completely bought into a far left cult, because that's what socialism is, it's a far left cult, that's a significant problem. And remember, the kids graduating from high school and college now have been taught this in their entire K through 12 education. From the time they were in kindergarten, they've had this content dripped out to them across every single subject area in their entire K through 12 education. And so now we're about to see a little army of socialist sleeper agents go into the workplace. And that's when the real fun begins. Because remember, their number one goal is to abolish capitalism. Exactly. We're going to have the American Cultural Revolution. And I think it's going to happen within the next 30 years. And unless people start waking up and recognizing how significant the problem is, we ain't going to be able to stop it. So you came at the right time, Kate. Time to wake up.
Unequal power manifests all the ways that it's shown, which is to say, have you ever been to a public space, or in particular a workplace, where it hasn't been free, depending on whether or not the toilet paper's out, but generally it's considered important.
Yeah, exactly. I must be wrong. Tim Pool says Gen Z are super conservatives and we're winning. No, I'm sorry. I wish that Tim Pool was right. I actually genuinely do. I really genuinely wish I was wrong and Tim Pool was right, but I'm not.
To provide people the means by which to take care of fluids that are involuntarily coming out of their body. Am I right? Right? Like we are. It's expected when you go to a workplace that you will have toilet paper. But you know what's not expected in a workplace? That you will have free access to period hygiene, right? That's something that you have to pay for. I remember those janky machines in high school, in middle school, that you had to pay for, right? There's a fluid involuntarily coming out of your body and you have to pay for it versus it being freely supplied to you, right? So that's a ridiculous, but also really poignant example of one of the ways in which that unequal power manifests. And misogyny is an individual action or policy that polices or upholds both. So that's the things that we experience on an individual level that uphold that. So that's somebody saying, no, we're going to continue to.
So misogyny is when you uphold capitalism, essentially. Misogyny is the laws and the policies that uphold capitalism because misogyny upholds the patriarchy and sexism.
Charge 25 cents for a tampon. We're going to continue to shame women who and make it difficult for them to take care of their own bodies in the workplace or in school.
Well,
all right, now
Tim Pool might actually have something. I agree with this more than I do that with his crazy idea that conservatives are winning. Like there are a lot of second and third generation socialists. Like that's this they have entire childcare programs. I need to put the childcare program stuff online. I've been sitting on it for months. I don't really know why. I have their childcare plan. They have entire childcare programs where they are training little socialist activists in their meetings. They have like daycare plans. They have games they play with kids to make them socialist. They have all of that. So there are actually quite a few of like second and third generation socialists at this point. Now, like the socialists that were socialists in the 70s, a lot of them are kind of like dirty hippies. I'm not worried about them. Where we start to run into problem is when we get into like the queer Marxists and stuff like that.
We'll get to meme territory. God, I love this so much. This is the most anatomically horrifying and amazing example of homophobia and heteronormativity that maybe I've ever seen. So someone was so concerned when they created this image that they would think these two skeletons were queer that they put bone boobs on this gal on the right. They put bone boobs. They defied anatomy in like some so horrible ways just because they were so concerned that folks would interpret these skeletons as queer. I just love it and hate it so much. It's terrific, right? This is like the effort that folks had to go through to put those bone boobs on there. Okay, we're coming off the holidays. Did anybody do Elf on a Shelf with their kiddos or their grandkiddos? We love Elf on a Shelf here in our family. So
Smurf on a turf. Oh my God!
This is a derivative of that. Hopefully, folks love Harry Potter, but not J.K. Rowling. So you've heard of Elf on a Shelf, but have you heard of a Smurf on a turf? And TERF stands for Trans Exclusive Radical Feminists. And this means folks that have the heart of a feminist, but they don't understand the fact that patriarchy, misogyny, sexism apply to everyone who is not a cis man. They are excluding trans folks from the importance of understanding that gender injustice impacts them the most. And actually, I'm going to stop the screen share for a minute to tell you all about this because it actually really, it's deeply intertwined with my college experience.
Oh, she's doing a monologue.
I know folks here, we loved our college experience, right? That's why we're members of AAW, right? That college was incredibly important to us. I went to Bryn Mawr, which is a women's college on the East Coast.
Of course she did!
And it was
fucking Bryn
one of the
Mawr.
foundational experiences of my life. I got to be with extraordinary women, with brilliant women. And, you know, we had a t-shirt that said, Bryn Mawr, where the women are women and the men are scared. and it was right. And it was good. And that fact that it was a sacred space for women to be together and to learn together was so important to me. And y'all, it took me longer than I'm proud to admit to understand that trans folks, trans men, trans women, non-binary folks, genderqueer folks needed to be in that space too.
It's a women's
college. And
college.
I had the wrong end of the stick on that.
It's a women's
college. For the better part of 10 years. And
it's a women's college.
And my learning took too long.
Oh my God.
And what finally changed my mind is someone, one of the most brilliant women I've ever known, who said, Emily, why was Bryn Mawr created in 1885?
For women.
It was created because folks who were boxed out of higher education in this country needed a place that was just for them. Folks that were discriminated because of their gender needed a place to learn in community with one another. And in 1885, our best understanding was cis women, was women who were assigned female at birth, who identified as women, who presented as women. And that was our best understanding.
But now we've
And our
changed the
best understanding of
definition of
that
women.
has changed. Our best understanding of that now is anybody who is harmed by this bullshit, patriarchal, sexist, binary construct of gender. And the folks who are on the tip of the spear of the most harm are our trans and non-binary brothers and sisters and folks. They're the ones who are most harmed and most boxed out.
She's actually arguing that the definition of woman has changed to include anyone who might be oppressed under capitalism. That's the argument being made. That Bryn Mawr was originally created for people who are oppressed and couldn't get an education, aka women. But now we have a different understanding of what women means. And our new definition of women includes an awful lot of men who are not privileged under capitalism. And so we have to let everyone in, as long as they are not straight, cis, heteronormative, white men.
And they're the ones who deserve the most love and the most centering, and whose places in these sacred places where we have carved out and said patriarchy doesn't belong here, that's where those folks deserve to be centered the most. And y'all, I had the wrong end of the stick on that for a long, long time.
Emily, I have someone who's asked a question that may sort of relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's one of our members, my second cousin was born a boy.
Well, yeah, so Stony Baloney says female equals oppressed by capitalism. No, that's not what Emily said. Because Emily is employing the intersectionality framework, right? So the intersectionality framework says if someone is oppressed by this, then we're all oppressed by this. And that thing they're oppressed by is capitalism. So Emily has argued that Bryn Mawr had to accept men into a women's college because the obligation of Bryn Mawr was to admit everyone who was oppressed by capitalism under intersectionality. Does that make sense?
At the age of 21, he transitioned to a woman with surgery and hormone treatment. Recently, she married a man. So how would you categorize that? And also with respect to the example that you just gave,
these women are
what
so
changed
sweet.
your mind?
They're so sweet. They're so innocent and pure.
Yeah.
I'll toss those both to you.
They're progressives.
Yeah.
They're
I'll
not
start with
evil.
the first. What changed my mind was really the story I just told. Somebody being like, what was the core of what started this institution? This institution was about who had been boxed out and who had been boxed out the most. And if you look,
see what was like, so I just want to say, I don't interpret what Douglas is doing as disrespectful. I know someone asked him if he was being disrespectful. I didn't interpret it that way. I think he's here to learn. So everyone play nice, okay, in the chat. So what is she saying now? Is that the definition of woman who has changed to everyone who is oppressed. Let's listen to her do this whole thing so you guys can hear it.
Yeah. I'll start with the first. What changed my mind was really the story I just told. Somebody being like, what was the core of what started this institution? This institution was about who had been boxed out and who had been boxed out the most. And if you look at what state legislatures across this country are currently attacking, right? They were attacking women. I mean, they still attack women, please, let's be real. But the disproportionate amount of attacks on trans people, what bathroom they can use, where they can go to school, what sports teams they can play on, what access to healthcare they have, right? That is wildly disproportionately attacking trans folks based on gender, right? Which is the same reason that women couldn't access higher education, which is why women who went to Yale, which wasn't, by the way, co-ed until the 70s, had to shower in the basement, even though their dorm rooms were on the 4th floor, because men couldn't possibly share the John with gals, right?
Wow.
Like these were the things. It's all based on gender. And if you interrogate your understanding of gender, you have to come to the eventual conclusion that the folks among us who are most disproportionately harmed by that are our trans and non-binary friends and brothers and sisters and siblings. So that's what changed my mind. It was so uncomfortable, but when I took stock of what my actual gender analysis was telling me, there was no way I couldn't apply that same standard. So the question about identity of someone who was assigned something at birth and then came out and then married someone of a particular gender, that is entirely about the independent variables of the spectrums we looked at, right? Those things are not related. And we think they are. We've been told that they are. Your gender assigned at birth, your gender expression, your sexuality. But those things are all independent, which means you could be assigned one gender at birth and have a different gender identity and have a totally different sexuality. And that's all fine. And that's super confusing for everybody who's trying to deprogram the programming that we've been given. But that's a question that's fundamentally about all of those spectrums being independent. Anybody can fall anywhere on them. And that's confusing. That's confusing for us. And we have to have compassion for ourselves, particularly if we've known and loved somebody with a particular gender identity or a particular gender expression or a particular sexual orientation, or we have some expectation of how they might show up, right? That's something that can be tough, and there's grieving to do with that.
And I'm gonna do something. Hopefully this is okay. I want to just hop in, take the privilege of making an editorial comment. You know, you were talking about gender and the injustices and so on, and the current day and age that we're unfortunately seeing. I am not here to say racism doesn't exist, but believe me, that's
here we go.
Part of
He's
what
about to say something,
I'm all
boomer.
about, being the chair here. But on some level, I almost feel like people have this emotional reaction deeper when we're talking about these issues. I don't know, maybe I'm off base here, but it just seems to, wow, it's like, oh, we got to do this. No, we can't do that. Kind of just deep, reflexive, don't go anywhere else reaction. So anyway, I don't know how you feel about
that. More threatening is what it is. It's more threatening to us cis folk to see that, because how did they get there? Maybe we really should get there. You know, who knows? I think it's just very threatening to us.
Yeah, maybe it's contagious, Marty. Anyway,
oh God, maybe so.
God forbid. God forbid. Anyway, yeah. What do you say about?
I love these older women. They're so cute. I can't be mad at these older women because they're just like they're like they don't understand any of this. They don't understand what's going on. They don't understand the bigger picture. It's just maybe it's contagious, Marty. These two older women are not dangerous. They're useful idiots for all this stuff, and I can still love them.
About that, Emily, in terms of
I love that point, and I love Marty's point, which is to say that it's super threatening. I think that we have accept the dignity and the honor and the reality of trans and non-binary folks in particular. Everything to do with the patriarchy comes crumbling down. Everything it's ever told us has to be false, right? These boxes you have to fit in, these identities you have to hold or not hold.
Prometheus is asking a good question. When the socialists want to abolish the gender binary, would all those various gender identities cease to exist? Oh, no. No. It would get worse. Because if you abolish the gender binary, all of a sudden, you have a world of an infinite amount of gender identities that just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing out into infinity. There is no cap on the gender identities that can exist once you abolish the binary. Because by liberating people from the gender binary, they have freed themselves from the restrictive constraints of capitalism. And the gender binary is what keeps people like oppressed within the binary system. And once we liberate them, they can literally be whatever they want. So when I say they want to create a world of they thems, I'm using a little bit of shorthand because it wouldn't just be they thems. It would be an infinite array of craziness. Does that make sense? Let's see. Is Emily dangerous? Yes. Yes, she is, Kate. Emily is a true believer. Emily is one of the people spreading and perpetuating this ideology, and she understands it, and she knows what she's teaching. And I know that because I sat in one of her private trainings just last week and listened to her for like 3 hours. She is a true believer. She's on her best behavior right now, but I heard Emily do a good long rant about capitalism a week ago. She knows exactly what she's trying to abolish. She's just not saying it in this presentation because this is for public consumption. Emily does have a page on the wiki. It's not built out yet, but I will be adding this to it later. She does.
All of that comes crumbling down when we say, actually, your sex assigned at birth, your gender expression, your gender identity, and your sexuality are totally sovereign from one another. And we can love and embrace everybody, no matter where they fall on those independent spectrums.
But
Then-
I think, go ahead.
No, then the patriarchy, what it has told us, and the oppression that is enacted on those who are not cis heterosexual men, then starts to crumble.
Well, I don't think that most of us understand it.
Exactly.
And I think that's what makes it so threatening. We can't figure out why our third son has decided all of a sudden that he is, theoretically all of a sudden, that he is really wanting to be a woman, or that he really wants to be with men, or whatever the heck it is, you know? And I've inherited.
I feel like I want to track down Marty. This presentation wasn't this long ago. This was like a week and a half ago. I feel like I want to track down Marty's email address and I want to send Marty an email and I want to be like, Marty, I watched your session on the internet. Let me explain to you what is actually happening. I'm very sorry that you listened to a presentation from a cult leader. I know you don't understand this and I know it sounds crazy and I promise I really don't hate trans people. I don't care. I don't care if people are trans. I don't actually care if people are non-binary. I don't care. It makes no difference. I want everyone to be happy. I want everyone to live their best life. But Marty, don't get sucked into the socialist cult, Marty, because you think you need to be a good person. Don't do it. You seem like a very nice lady. We don't dislike you. Marty does not understand what she has gotten herself into. Marty, there is still time. There's still time so that you don't get sucked into the socialist cult. We're on your team, Marty. I'm serious. I think these older ladies are nice. I'm not even joking.
A lot that in my family very recently, and it's very interesting and it's very difficult because I don't know the folks well enough to really talk to them about it, because I think that they're going to think I'm maybe criticizing them or just patronizing them or something, so I don't say anything.
Right. Which is its own form of harm, because if we're coming from a place of curiosity and love and wanting to understand, right, that there's such a beauty in those conversations.
I don't like having guests. Every once in a while, maybe. I don't like having guests. I don't like being guests on other people's shows. It's no offense to other people. I just don't like it. It has always ended up messing up my life in some way. I just want to sit in my corner and I want to research this stuff on the internet and I want to watch these presentations and I want to watch them with you guys and teach this content and then write about it on my Substack. I don't want guests. I don't want to go on anyone else's shows. I just want to sit here and do my work so that I can explain it to other people, and that's it. And I know that disappoints people. I really, really do. But anytime I get other people involved, chaos tends to ensue. And it oftentimes results with me getting defamed on the internet. And it's just like, not worth it. Not worth it.
And we all are swimming in these waters. I have a few slides in a moment that are, this is colonization.
Oh!
There are indigenous.
What does colonization mean? Pop quiz for the chat. Why did Emily say this is colonization? Texas Gal says, did other countries and cultures get sucked into socialism? Yes. Canada's pretty socialist. The UK is very socialist. I focus almost entirely on the United States because that's the most important to me for obvious reasons. India is getting sucked into gender ideology. I keep hearing about it. Like, gender ideology is starting to become like a big ass problem there, which is like weird. But like, there are actually, if you go on YouTube and you look, there are a lot of gender ideology presentations in India and Southeast Asia. So I think that that's going to be a thing there too. All right, what is colonization? What is it? Taking of the land. Colonization equals capitalism. Colonization means implementing capitalism and privatizing the land. It means the taking of property that was public collective property and oppressing the land under the force of capitalism, imposing capitalism on a population that lives on the land, aka private property. Colonization means making the system capitalist. Yes, but it has to do specifically with like land and the people living on the land. Taking land for capitalist reasons. Exactly, Kate. Exactly. When the capitalist oppressors come into other countries and privatize the land under capitalism. Capital or colonization is bringing capitalism to land where it is absent. Colonization means enforcing capitalism on indigenous people, imposing capitalism on indigenous folks, FOLX. Well done. There are a couple other right answers too. Oh no, Marty's a widow. We love Marty. Can we adopt Marty? Anyway.
Communities all over the planet where queer and trans folks were held in incredibly high regard.
That's right.
They were seen as special, as holding an important and central place in the community. They were loved. I remember my mom did a lot of work with the indigenous and native community in Southern Oregon. And I remember when I was in high school and she started to tell me about Two-Spirit folks and the indigenizing sexuality and love. And I remember thinking, oh my God.
Indigiqueer.
There are communities where these folks not only are not seen as lesser, they're seen as important.
Mm-hmm.
That was mind-blowing to my 15-year-old self, right? And that was around the world, except for a few, bigoted shitheads in Western Europe who've created a world in which none of us are really care to live right now. that crafted a space that made it very difficult for us to think outside these binaries. And that is the work. Marty, it's tough. It's super tough.
Equals the cult.
Kids, grandkids, nieces and nephews, people that we love and we had this conception of, telling us that they're not who we thought they were. And there's grieving to do with that. And there's unlearning, and it's messy, and we're not going to get it right. And I got it wrong, and I still get it wrong. I have a beloved co-trainer who's trans and non-binary, and I misgendered them like at least for 6 months straight. And you're like, I do this stuff for a living. Like, nobody gets to be proud about how perfectly they do this, because nobody does.
Well, Emily, we had another question. Is this all happening because we just don't have enough words? I mean, it seems to me you were trying to
yes, they will create more
add
words.
some words and make some distinctions.
Yes, they
but is the problem that we just don't have enough words?
No, I mean, yes, and I think the problem is that we've constructed language to invisibilize this community. My wife is from Mexico, and I was just talking with my kiddo about, every noun,
not boy or girl.
Every noun in Spanish has a gender, right? There's actually no way to even convey, a fork or a blanket in a genderless way. So language is also a tool of colonization. Language is also a way, a form of oppression that crafts our.
Language is also a form of colonization. Language is also a form of oppression because Spanish does not have any words without a gender. I need to clip that. That was fucking beautiful. That was fucking beautiful. Hang on, let me go back and get her question in. That was just too beautiful not to make its own separate clip. Hang on, configure recording. I changed my settings last night. All right, that works. That works. Bear with me, guys. We're going to watch that again so I can get this clip.
Well, Emily, we had another question. Is this all happening because we just don't have enough words? I mean, it seems to me you were trying to add some words and make some distinctions, but is the problem that we just don't have enough words?
No, I mean, yes, and I think the problem is that we've constructed language to invisibilize this community. My wife is from Mexico, and I was just talking with my kiddo about, every noun in Spanish has a gender, right? There's actually no way to even convey, a fork or a or a blanket in a genderless way, So language is also a tool of colonization. Language is also a way, a form of oppression that crafts our experience of the world. So the fact that we don't have language for it is not so much the impediment. It's the tool, right? That's not just like a neutral thing that happened. That's the point. Language resists this multiplicity, this plurality of life, right? The language itself is very clumsy. When we talk about abortion, we often talk about, women, it's a woman's choice, and it is. And it's anybody who can get pregnant's choice, which is a clumsy fucking phrase, right? Like they, them is kind of clumsy. We don't like it. It's fussy. It sounds wrong, and it's language itself resisting the freedom that comes from being emancipated from these gender binaries. So language is, I think, in some ways the impediment, but it is also the tool of colonization and the tool of bigotry that is forcing this binary upon us. And we can resist that. We can choose to resist that. We can choose to say, hey, y'all, hey, folks, hey, students, hey, parents, instead of boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. We can choose. We can choose the language, even if it's clumsy or even if we don't love it, even if it's not what we're used to.
Well, I think there's another.
That was one of the greatest clips that I have ever clipped. That was so beautiful. Let me just make sure I have it saved. Hang on 1 second. My computer's running slow because I have too many files open. Hang on. Yes, I have it. That was beautiful. That clip had everything. That clip had colonization. That clip had oppression. That clip had like them explaining why they're always trying to change language because they're trying to overcome the oppressive. They're literally arguing that language is capitalism. That the capitalists are using language to oppress people. These are the moments. This is why we watch all this stuff. This is why we spend hours a week watching this crap, for moments like that, for those specific instances where they say the quiet part out loud and you hear all the language together and they tell you what their definitions are. Does everyone understand what just happened? Also, we got a nice little outburst because Emily was acting kind of crazy in that clip, wasn't she? That was like, it was like the mask fell, the facade fell, and she was like all of a sudden acting like a crazy person over this idea of language. That was great. That was like everything that I needed. I do need to remember. I really, really no. You know what I need to do, Sam? I need to shut down some files on my computer because I have way too many open, and I need to restart my computer. I've needed to restart my computer for like a week and a half. I need to update my browser. I need to do the basics. I haven't done the basics. I've been doing other stuff. Language is a major vehicle for social reproduction. Yes, Stony Baloney. Well done. I want to start making clips like this so I can show people what the last plan is. I mean, you just have to watch a lot of stuff and you have to like really learn it. Now, you like Liquid Marble, you know your stuff. You've been around long enough, you know what to look for. I think it's just a matter of literally watching presentations, looking for clips. Please like tag me if you guys are making clips. Tayton does this all the time. Tayton just like watches this stuff like all day and he posts all these some clips on Twitter. But like we need like as many clips as we can get. So if you're making clips, tag me in it. Like let me know. Like set like if you don't want to publish it somewhere but you want it published somewhere, like send it to me. I'll put it up on the Substack so we have an archive of this stuff. But like if you want to take, like I'm not saying I'm not taking your credit or anything. If you want to post it, that's fine too. I don't really care. I can reference you, I can link to you, whatever. But I'm trying to create this is like what the Unwoke wiki is and it's what the Substack is. I'm trying to create this massive archive of this stuff. So the more people doing it, the better, and we can all help each other is how I see it. All right, guys, we have about 20 minutes left of this presentation. Let's see if we can get through it before 8 p.m. That would be great.
Another question about, is this where putting preferred pronouns in your name tag or Zoom box can help? You know, can that help?
It totally can. And you know what? That's important in and of itself. And even more importantly, it's a signal. It's a signal that you give a shit. Right? Even if you get it wrong.
It ain't nothing gonna happen on TikTok of any significance because people like I would recommend against that. It's going to like give it a try and see how it works out, I guess. But like that's not something that I think would actually be productive because here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing. You guys are way far ahead of where most people are. Not if you're new. If you're new, you still got learning to do. But like people like Tough Love has been around a while. Liquid Marble has been around for a while. Like you guys are way far ahead and you understand things that other people don't. And one of the things that I've learned is you can't just play these clips for people and expect that they're going to understand it in the same way you do because you guys have already gone through a long learning process to get to the level of understanding that you have, right? So I like the recommendation, and you guys can do whatever you want. So I can't tell you what to do. I'm not trying to, but like the recommendation I would make is if you're going to play clips for people, make sure you explain to them what all these things mean, because just like I have to repeat the same thing over and over and over and over and over again until I'm blue in the face and I'm driving myself insane, you guys have to do that too, because repetition is how people learn. And they need someone to kind of guide their process. Otherwise, it's really hard for people to pick this stuff up.
It's a signal that you care and that you see someone whose pronouns might not be in alignment with what you expect of them based on their presentation or their name or whatever, right? Like it's a signal. And that is so incredibly powerful, right? Like if you saw someone wearing an AAUW pin walking down the street or at a restaurant, you would know that you had some shared values in common, right? Right? Or you know someone went to your alma mater, or you know someone who had a kiddo who went to your kiddo's high school. There's some camaraderie there. So it's really about signaling that you give a shit. And that's so much more important than the actual mechanics of the pronoun or getting the pronoun right, you know. Actually, Trisha, would it be helpful? I have a little thing about allyship that I can share that shows a couple of important things.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Because someone was talking about how do we teach kindness? You know, is there a letter for a heterosexual?
Is there a letter for not being a bigoted piece of shit? All right, I have a bunch of myths in here
Wow.
that are actually really helpful to understand. And And here we have, these are really common microaggressions. So things that actually do the opposite of pronouns are things that do quite a bit of harm. Even if it's just little pieces of harm chipping away at somebody, misgendering, misnaming, incorrect pronouns, asking intrusive questions, who's the man in this relationship, or who's the wife? Referencing LGBTQ family members. Oh, don't worry, my aunt is gay, which again, well intended, is really meant to other folks in some ways, perpetuating harmful myths or stereotypes, except for Cher. We all love Cher. Every queer person loves Cher. I'm kidding, but also we really do. Using terms or labels that are only for queer folks to use. I have a very loving story where my dad, who is just like a tremendous ally, wonderful guy, and at one point was like, oh, like she's a big dyke like you. And I was like, Dad, that's not a word. That's not a word that you get to use. And he was like, that felt weird when I said it. And I was like,
she's saying that
good.
People
Let's not use that word again. That's my word to use. That's not your word to use.
Wow.
Mimicking or copying affects or mannerisms, homophobic jokes or language or metaphors, interrupting, dismissing, ignoring, plagiarizing queer folks, which happens an awful lot. Okay. This is an important political reality to understand. This is actually from 2023, and that's not including 2024, which is upon us. This is the number of states targeting transgender healthcare in recent years. So this is bills banning or restricting transgender healthcare. Look at this explosion, y'all. It's wild. It's wild. The exponential increase. I have no doubt 45 to 50 states will be introducing transgender targeting healthcare.
Well, probably not that
within
many,
this
but
current legislative session. This is just 2021, and it has gotten so much worse since then. States that have enacted curriculum censorship or hostile school climates, states that passed but then vetoed it, or any introduced bills, the whole country will be red, unfortunately, when it comes to this. So this is a clear and present danger.
Actually work.
And it is not
only they actually
women,
solve the fucking
cis women,
problem.
women assigned at birth, and their bodily autonomy, their educational autonomy, everything that we as AAUW women stand for and care about. This is actively targeting our trans and non-binary and genderqueer folks that are experiencing just the 21st century of what cis women experience.
I saw it, Sam. It's a good idea.
18th, 19th, and 20th century.
And I also think, Emily, a lot of people look at transgender healthcare as the surgeon. We're going to go operate right away. I mean, that is such a misunderstanding of the breadth of what transgender healthcare really is, what needs to be done before the surgeon comes on the scene, whether that's even in the cards, anyway.
Yes, no, 100%, Trish. So on my myths, which we don't have time to get to, but being trans means having surgery. Absolutely not. Being trans, all that being trans means, right, is that your sex assigned at birth is different from your gender identity. That's it. That's all that being trans means. It doesn't mean that you use any particular pronoun. It doesn't mean that you dress any particular way. It doesn't mean that you show up any particular way. It doesn't mean that you have any type of medical treatment. It doesn't mean anything other than that the sex you were assigned at birth is not congruent with the expectations of your gender identity.
You don't need any medical treatment to be trans.
And that is all you need to prove your transness.
What she really means by that is you don't need any medical treatment to be queer. Because remember, trans is different than queer, and these people really think that all trans people, to mean transition, should be queer. And so that's why they say you don't need any medical intervention at all to be trans. You just need to declare that you are, because that's what you need to do to be queer. Queer is a far left political ideology. It is not about being gay. It is not about being trans. Just because you're gay or trans doesn't mean you're queer. All you need to do to be queer or non-binary is declare that you are queer or non-binary, which is why they say that you don't need medical care to be trans. Just say that you are. That's all that's required. Well, what you got to understand is this is their language. They're not taking your language and muddling the words. They're speaking their language. This is how they talk all the time. This is how they talk to each other in private when there are no cameras. So, what's happened is because of the K through 12 and university system, at some point, the language that was being used in the United States split into two different categories. And both of the teams use the same words, but they have different definitions for those words. And they use their words and their definitions when they're talking to their friends, right? And so you have people over here that are like normal people that just like they use the normal kind of English as it was always meant. And then you have the ones that skewered off over here into the socialist cult that just speak socialist to each other all day, every day. And the language developed separately. So it sounds like it's all English, but it's not English. One is English and one is socialist. And that's why we have to learn socialist, because if you learn how to speak their language, you see when it shows up in public. This is the queering of language. Exactly, MacB, the queering of language.
And lots and lots of trans folks decide to have hormone therapy, decide to present themselves differently, decide to change their name or their pronouns or to have surgery. And that's wonderful. And those are all things that are available to them. But that does not define transness. Similarly, there's another myth that trans kids and youth are routinely receiving irreversible medical treatment prior to age 18. That is not true.
It is true.
It is incredibly difficult to receive gender-affirming care even above the age of 18. There's a 4-year waiting list at OHSU to receive gender-affirming care on the Oregon Health Plan. It takes an extraordinary amount of just effort to get gender-affirming actual medical care. And the fact that young folks are like, they're not receiving, like, gender-affirming care for a kiddo can be using their correct pronouns. It can be letting them wear clothes that feel good to them in their body. It can be letting them use the restrooms that feel right to them. It can be letting them play on a sports team, even if they're...
Hang on, Kate, I love that you're asking so many questions. Thank you for doing that. Okay, so from my rough understanding of the far left, they have a struggle, like class struggle. No. Pop quiz for the chat. What does struggle mean? Struggle isn't just about class. What does struggle mean? The 4 goals of the woke left are always and forever the same. Gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. Every single thing the left does is to meet one or more of those 4 goals with the ultimate goal of ushering in their Marxist utopia. To struggle is the revolution. Struggle means the communist revolution, the Marxist revolution. They are in a perpetual struggle because they are in a perpetual revolution. They are trying to overthrow capitalism and install the socialist states of America. I literally have them on video saying this. I'm not making that up. Struggle means the revolution to liberate from capitalism. And remember, gender is a way of liberating from capitalism. Private property is a way of liberating from capitalism. Race is a way of liberating from capitalism. The cis heteronormativity, queer Marxist bullshit is a way of liberating from capitalism. Abortion is a way of liberating from capitalism. The nuclear family is a way of liberating from capitalism. It all goes back to the being liberated from capitalism, all of it. The revolution is to be liberated from capitalism. They're trying to destroy capitalism. The perpetual revolution. The perpetual revolution. It will never be complete. The revolution is perpetual. The revolution, it's like in 1984, where in 1984, they are constantly at war with either Eurasia or East Asia. Remember? And then in the middle of 1984, they go from being at war with Eurasia to, or like Oceania is always at war with either Eurasia or East Asia. And in the middle of the book, they go from being at war with Eurasia to being at war with East Asia. The struggle is perpetual. They'll always be at war with someone. Once they get the Marxist revolution in the United States, then it's time to go global, baby. And that is when the radical revolutionary socialists in the United States start their war with the WEF and the Klaus Schwab globalists, because they are not on the same team. They do not like each other, and they're going to fight eventually. And the radical revolutionary socialists are probably going to win in the United States because they own the schools, and the WEF is going to win internationally because they're the WEF. And at some point, they're going to fight. But it's going to be after the socialist revolution in the United States, I think. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but that's my theory anyway.
They're mediocre, which most trans kids are, like the rest of us. It's about, that's what gender affirming care is. The likelihood that folks are experiencing irreversible medical treatment is just not a thing. It just doesn't exist. It's like voter fraud. It's a gorgon of the right that has been created and has no basis.
It's like voter fraud. Indeed it is.
Emily,
Indeed it is,
can
Emily.
you zip through
Yes.
most of your myths? I know time is flying. We've had great comments from people.
Yeah, totally.
Really, and don't forget allyship, but I'd love to see all your myths.
Yeah.
Hey, we're almost done. Less than 10 minutes left, guys. We're almost there. Beth, Queen Beth of the chat. Thank you. I have been listening and I was bent over laughing at the language tirade. Then I remembered they're winning and I put the fork down instead of gouging my eye out. Beth, don't gouge your eye out. Come on, we can still have a lot of fun before we descend into the socialist utopia. No need to have a bleak outlook.
Yeah, so this is number 9. Gender affirming medical care was created by and for trans folks. This is ridiculous. Every bit of gender affirming care was actually created for cis straight folks. So electrolysis, breast reduction, breast augmentation, hysterectomies, anything to do with hair, vocal feminization, like everything to do with how we alter our bodies to be more gender conforming started with cis straight folks who wanted to manipulate your bodies. And you know what? I'm here for bodily autonomy. I am here for it, but I am not here for folks having access to things like electrolysis or breast augmentation.
Hang on, Teresa's got an interesting question. If they consider other countries Marxist comrades, yes. If you are a member of the party, you are a comrade, and it doesn't matter what country you live in because they don't believe in borders. We don't really do the WEF stuff on this channel, Kate. We look at the radical revolutionary socialists who are not the same as the WEF, but there are a lot of people talking about them as though they are the same. And so there are a lot of other people that are talking about that. So I'm sure you can get some recommendations in the chat. The most important thing to know is, though, the radical revolutionary socialists in the US are not the same group as the WEF, and a lot of people conflate them and confuse them. They're groups that have similar goals, but it's like two different teams going for the same trophy sort of thing. They have the same goal, but they're going to fight. They're going to duke it out to see who gets the trophy. But they want globalism. Both groups, like the radical revolutionary socialists want global communism, and the WEF wants like global totalitarianism, essentially.
Or hysterectomy, when it is a medical necessity or even a cosmetic preference, but being denied to trans folks because it has to do with their gender identity and not because it has to do with their cosmetic preference. So gender affirming medical care was created by and for cis straight folks, and we are systemically denying it to trans folks because it's actually a part of their core identity and not because of something cosmetic that they're interested in. All right, I'm going to go back here. Also mindful of time, I would just love to hear from folks. If anybody needs to pop off, would be so delighted to engage with folks after the fact. Humans are the only living things that engage in queer behavior. Most of the natural world is queer AF. Birds and slugs and fish and flowers. It's actually the anomaly to have a gender binary in nature. To have like just strictly male physical characteristics and behavior and female characteristics and behavior is actually the minority in the natural world. which is wild, right? Because we're told that this is like unnatural or against nature. Silly and wrong. Any biologist will tell you. People choose to be queer or trans. The vast majority of folks feel that they experience their identity as something that is inherent to them, and that is not something that is a voluntary choice in one way or another. This is an important one, especially when it comes to right-wing folks who are attacking queer and trans folks, that queer folks are perpetrators of abuse, or people become queer or trans because, or come out as queer or trans because they were abused. 95% of folks who choose to perpetrate abuse, particularly against minors, are cis heterosexual men. And that's largely because that abuse of minors mostly has to do with power and access. So when you think about, and 90% of them, again, are cis heterosexual men. So it's about who has access, particularly to young children. And it's often cis heterosexual men who have access to young men or boys. And that is entirely about power and access and has nothing to do with sexuality. So this is how we protect our young folks and who we think is safe to be around our young folks, and has absolutely nothing to do with sexuality or with gender identity or expression. This is a good one. Most queer folks are ashamed of their identity and don't want to be asked about it. Actually, most queer folks just don't want to be perpetrated or harmed based on it. Most queer folks are happy to chat about it or happy to disclose things about their identity, so long as it's respectfully asked and carefully honored. That's not a big deal. We see this in healthcare scenarios a lot. I do a lot of trainings for healthcare folks or human services folks who are wanting to attend to queer and trans folks. And they're like, oh, but I don't want to ask. And I'm like, actually, if you're not out to get anybody, we're fine. We're happy to tell you that we have wives and kids and partners and loved ones and what our pronouns are. And that's fine. If you're coming from a place of appreciative inquiry, we got it. Don't worry about it. This is the last myth that we haven't covered yet. That queer folks live lives of marginalization, disease, misery, and rejection. And this is not to say that queer and trans folks don't experience hardship. Of course we do. And we do disproportionately. And we live lives of beauty and contribution and resilience and joy and magic. So that part is wonderful too. When you think about oppressed communities, we don't always want to think about the hardship and the turmoil and the bigotry. We also want to think about the beauty and the joy and the resilience and all the contributions that they're making to our communities. Okay, I know I'm super mindful of time. These are some ways that we can show up in allyship. So pronouns are great. Pronouns are so great, and they're great in and of themselves, and they're great as a signal that you give a shit. And these are other ways to
You don't care
start
if you
to
don't use their
unpack those
pronouns.
spectrums, start to unbraid them from one another in your mind, which is in my mind, the best and most important gender justice work we can do in our lifetimes. So fostering empathy, understanding that if you are a cis straight person, you probably won't ever have to worry about what bathroom you use. You won't have to worry about your right to marry the person you love.
Beth, thank you again for the super chat. You may have answered this before, but do you think there's going to be a P or map added? I think that they want to make it a protected class. I don't know if they're going to get away with this. I don't know if I was pretty convinced they were going to get away with this like a year ago. I don't know if they're going to get away with it now, because a lot of what they're doing actually isn't about sex. It's not about grooming kids for sex as much as people think it is. A lot of what they're doing is about teaching kids that gender is a performance. But there have certainly been some laws and policies implemented that lead me to believe that they are going to try to make MAPS, which is minor attracted person, a protected class under the Civil Rights Act, to basically make it where, like, you can't be fired from your job for being a MAP. Like, if you're a kindergarten teacher and you put in your Twitter profile that you're a minor attracted person, they can't fire you for it because it would be a protected class under the Civil Rights Act. I actually do. I got banned off of Medium for saying this, by the way. Like, this is like a like I don't know if that's going to happen for sure. I think it's a lot less likely now than it was like a year ago, because they were really pushing the map stuff like a year ago, and now that's kind of like died off. I don't hear about it as much, but they might still get there eventually. But good question, Beth. Appreciate it. Yeah, like the thing of it is, and like why I'm not as worried about it anymore, is that like it's too small of a group. Like they want everyone to be queer. Making everyone queer and non-binary is a much bigger priority to these people than maps, honestly. And I know that doesn't please people when like who are pushing like the groomer stuff, but like that's just reality. We never hear them talk about this. They talk about queer stuff all the time. They don't talk about maps all the time. Every once in a while, not all the time. A map is a minor attracted person.
Love being taken away by a Supreme Court decision.
God.
You won't have to worry about your kid being able to get the health care that they need and deserve based on their gender identity. So just understanding the hardship and trying to connect with that. Leveling up your analysis. All of you are here again, 8 p.m. on a wintry night to learn more. And that's such an incredible example of being willing to try to expand how you understand gender and how you show up for others in your. This is
just not true. I'm sorry. This is just not true. The problem is no one was listening to what they were saying, but I can very easily find presentations from 10 years ago where they're talking about queer this, queer that, queer the other thing. They started pushing queer and non-binary like really heavily around 2015, but they were doing it before then too. We watched a queer theory presentation from like 2009. So it's just not true that they weren't talking about this 10 years ago. They were talking about it. The problem is that no one was listening.
Finding your language. This is not just pronouns. This is about saying y'all instead of ladies and gentlemen. This is about saying, hey, where's your grown up to your kiddo, as opposed to saying,
hang on. That's not how this works. Queer is a far left political ideology. They are winning. So why would they give up being queer? They're winning. They're getting what they want. It is a far left political ideology. You have to know the definitions of what you're talking about.
Where's your mom or where's your dad? This is about divesting from stereotypes. It's just being mindful. And again, it's not that we're not going to get it all right all the time, but if you can de-gender and de-stereotype your language, so much the better. Audit listening and improving. Actually being like, hey, you know what? For our local AEW chapter, how was the experience for our queer women? How is the experience for our parents of queer kiddos? Hey, let's hear about it. And if there are things to learn, if there are ways that we fell short, let's listen and let's strive to improve them. Let's listen with an open heart. So being deeply curious about the experience of anybody who experiences marginalization or oppression. Taking a good look at policies and practices. I have no idea what AEW national stance is on gender inclusion, but I would go so far as to venture that anybody who's not a cis man should belong at the table of AEW. I think that anybody who's experienced gender oppression in an educational context belongs here, because that's the original heart of our mission. And that's beautiful. And that's an example of the practices and policies that we're trying to overturn based on this, honestly, real bullshit understanding of gender. And then the last is to vote and buy, attend, and consume with attention and intention. It took me a while. I don't know if anybody's on like a social media cleanse, but getting rid of things that don't make you feel good and intentionally following queer and trans folks. I love Alok Menon. Kate McKinnon is.
Hang on. I don't recognize you, so I think you're new here. We do not talk about white as in white race or anti-white or any of that, because whiteness means capitalism. They are never talking about race. If you have questions about that, you're welcome to ask. But I understand what language you're using, and I understand where it comes from, and that is not what we ascribe to here.
Incredible. There's so many amazing queer and trans thinkers and influencers. It's like, just think about what you digest on a daily basis, where you shop, where you spend your money, where you spend your time, what you're listening to and reading and paying attention to.
This is not what they're, Iris, this is not what they're doing. We are not going to descend into conservative lunacy. We have 4 minutes left of this presentation, guys. Can we please not descend into conservative lunacy in the last 4 minutes of the presentation? Please. Please. You don't want people to learn the biological names for the body parts? That's absurd, Iris. Come on. That's what biology is. What do you want? Like, do you expect that kids aren't going to ask about the parts of the body? That's absurd. You didn't do anything, Beth. That wasn't for you.
And just thinking, all right, I'm going to read at least 2 books by a queer trans author this year, or I'm going to watch a documentary about trans experience, or a family with a trans kiddo. Those are the sort of micro things that we ingest every day that can really transform our analysis and our empathy about the world.
That's just amazing. I don't want to precipitously cut you off. We've hit about an hour.
No. Whiteness is not a synonym for capitalism. You need to understand, because what that means, Douglas, is you think it's a synonym for, you think it means other things too. When these people use the term white, I know you're trying to get out of this, bro. You've been trying to weasel out of this all presentation. When people use the term whiteness, they mean capitalism. That is all that they mean. It has nothing to do with the color white. It has nothing to do with white skin color. It has nothing to do with that at all. It means the system of capitalism. If you have questions about that, you're welcome to ask your questions, but please do not assert how people should define these as, because we've already asserted it. We've already established the definition, and now what you're trying to do is change the definition that you've already been given because you don't like it. The definition is the definition, bro. You don't get to come in and change it. We've done thousands of hours of this research. We know what it means. Conservative lunacy. Always at the end of the presentation is when we descend into conservative lunacy.
Been a lot of information. You know, I don't know about the other folks here, but it's been very valuable. And I'm going to have to, think about all this and feel about all this. We could, have a brief chat, or, do breakout rooms. I think, my vote is, there's so much to have taken on here. I don't think there's a one of us that hasn't learned something or wants to know something more about. Then in a sense, it's almost superfluous to have a chat about what have we learned. This might be a good time to, to call it an end.
All
Emily,
right.
what do you think?
Totally. And I just, I love this group, and my heart is here. And my
Oh, Rufo did a debate with someone? Rufo doesn't have all this figured out, by the way. We're ahead of Rufo on the language stuff. I know, because I got into an entire argument about him where he asserted that whiteness was about skin color. And I was like, well, Cheryl Harris disagrees with you, Chris. And he said, Carlin, you don't understand what Cheryl Harris said. And I said, I've listened to Cheryl Harris. I understand exactly what she said. And she said that you can be black and have whiteness. That you can have black skin and have whiteness, and that whiteness is not about skin color. And she said it at UCLA in 2014. And he didn't respond to that because he knows he's wrong. I like Chris Rufo. I think he does a great job. I think there's no one better than him. I think that he is in exactly the position he needs to be in. I thank God he does the work he does. I'm not trying to shit on him or anything, but he does not understand the language like we do. And I do hope he removes the head from the ass someday and starts to learn it, because it's not like he's not way off. He's not like light years off like a lot of people, but he's like, it's just enough twisted that it's not quite right. He's not quite there. He's very smart. I'm not trying to shit on him or anything, but like he's not, it's slightly off, but he doesn't listen to me, so like whatever. But I should watch that. Maybe I will. I don't know. We'll see. Rottweiler says conservatives, the sexual liberation and agency of youth is a Marxist plan to break the family unit. It's not about normalizing MAPS. It's not about grooming. It's not about any of that. It never has been. It's about the nuclear family, which we will get into another day, because I think that we are done. And GGZ is not meant to be here. Okay. When I tell you to stop referring to, like, bro, don't be a smartass. Don't be a smartass. I hope you come back. I hope you learn. I really, really do. I will teach you what all this stuff means. But this is about learning. This is not about being a smartass, and this is not about advancing conservative talking points that are incorrect. Okay? So you're welcome to stay. I hope you do. I do think that's all we have for today, though, guys, because they're about to end the presentation, and I don't want to hear about them chit-chatting for a couple minutes, so we're going to end it there. As a reminder, this is Tuesday, which means that this is not my last stream of the day. This is but my first stream of the day. I will be live in about an hour and a half with Joshua for Nothing Remotely Controversial tonight. Joshua is back. He is healthy. We are going to do the show tonight at 9:30. For people who have never seen Nothing Remotely Controversial before, it is a show about news and psychics. And it's fun and it's lighthearted. And even if you don't believe in psychics, it's still fun. And you should all come at 9:30. It's going to be great. We give Kate the gold star today. Excellent first appearance on the channel, Kate. We do hope you come back. As a reminder, I stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. on this here channel. And then on Saturdays, we do my flagship stream, Socialism Saturday, at 6 p.m., where we watch the real hardcore stuff. We weren't watching the hardcore stuff today. The hardcore stuff happens on Saturdays because we're nerds. And instead of having fun on Saturdays and like going out and drinking beer and doing what normal people do, we watch socialism instead. Also, as a reminder, please subscribe to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Substack is my platform on the internet. It is not YouTube, contrary to popular belief. It is actually Substack. That's where all my best content is. That's where you can find clips in the video vault. That's where you can find my breakdowns of the woke ideology. If you have a question, Substack probably has an answer for you. Use the search function if you don't know what you're looking for. Lots of cool stuff on there, to include news, to include original independent journalism, to include me complaining about the feminists who claim they had an exclusive story that I broke 4 days ahead of them. You can go read about what happened there and how they tried to struggle session me yesterday and challenge me with cancellation. And I basically gave them the finger and said, F off, bitches. You don't get to dictate the calendar. All right, guys. That is Terry. Terry, you had your first Socialism Saturday this weekend and your mind was blown. Yeah, Socialism Saturday is the best. And I hope you guys come back this weekend. Not always easy to sit through, but bring some alcohol, smoke a joint, get a dessert or a bag of chips or something, and it helps. It helps. All right, guys, I'm going to go grab some dinner, and I will be back in an hour and a half for Nothing Remotely Controversial. Thank you for stopping by and spending some time with me today. I appreciate it. Take care, guys, and we will see you soon.